You're doing well.
Welcome. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Sam, and we're here to do the Metaphysical Fat.
Woohoo! Yay! So today we are so fortunate to have with us the Resident Heretic from BGCast, Stephen. Stephen started on his spiritual journey in 2008, and ever since then he's been working to uncover the nature of consciousness. And he's made a lot of headway, I would say.
I mean, definitely.
Anyway, if you've never seen BGCast, I would recommend you check it out. He's awesome. And without further ado, let's bring him on.
Hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, you've got a long list of things that you're good at, aren't you, Stephen?
I had a long list of demands, as you said, before we started the show. But I'm actually really excited to be here. I'm happy for you two, man. Like to see this all come to fruition, all of it start rolling, and the energy building with it. And I'm really stoked for you guys, and I'm grateful to be one of your first guests. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you for coming. It's been a bit strange, isn't it, Kirsten? It's kind of just it seemed to just not happen for ages, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, everything just kind of happened at once.
It did.
I guess that's how it works, isn't it? Yeah, when you're in alignment.
It is. It is.
Well, sometimes
it happens when it happens.
Oh yeah. Sometimes that's what happened with me when I first started my show. I started it back in 2020, and I had a few episodes, and then things came up, and I had to kind of put it down for a little. But I look back now, and I look at myself in 2020, and I'm like, I wasn't exactly in a place where I felt like I could deliver the message in a way that I see fit and I see the right way to do it. So sometimes, divine redirection's the thing, man. And it did. I had a lot of healing actually happen from 2020 to 2022. It was a very, very interesting 2 years I had there. A lot of dark night of the souls, a lot of new remembrances, new revelations from within. And now it's like I feel satisfied with how it's being done. I do, and I feel happy about how it's being done. So I totally get it, man. But I'm sure you two right now are insanely happy about how this is being done. So,
I mean, it's a bit like you said, though, isn't it? I think you've got to get to a place where you're level and I think it's a big ego thing, because if you do this and you've got an ego about you, you're just going to fuck it up, because it becomes about you and not about the message, doesn't it? That's the problem.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's a really good point. And yeah, we have done I think all of us have done so much healing and had so many. It's been a wild 5 years, I will say. Seems to be getting wilder by the moment.
That's one way. That is definitely one way to say it for sure.
I mean, Stephen, you talked about like maybe starting a podcast and then you came back to it. Why did you feel like it was the right time?
So back in 2020, like Kirsten was saying in the beginning, I woke up at a very young age. I was 20 years old. It was 2008, and I had just overcome addiction. I had overcome an opiate addiction that was really bad. I ended up getting in trouble for some things, and I had just a lot of things in my life that I wanted to change. And, that's what was the beginning of my spiritual evolution back then. And 2020 I had started to see everything that I had been researching, everything I had been talking about for the past 12 years start to become true with the whole event that happened in 2020. So that was the original call to arms. You know, I was like, no, that's it. Like, I have to do something now. You know, I have to. And because look at what's happening to us. You know, we're getting our sovereignty yanked from us. We're getting our autonomy yanked from us. You know, and of course, you two very well know that, you know, our sovereignty and our autonomy are very spiritual and important things, you know, and so that's where I decided it was time. And I think back then, why I'm kind of glad it got put down was there was a little bit of aggression too behind it, because there was, you know, everything that was going on back then. You know, everybody, the energies were high, as you both know. Everything was tense. Everything, you know, I still remember walking into Denver, Colorado, and there being nobody walking the streets, which was like one of the weirdest things to me still. Like, it just looking at that scene, just being in a dead city. And the energies were strange. And, you know, there was a little bit more angst and aggression behind what I was saying. And through putting it down and through healing myself further and really, you know, putting healing at the forefront of everything, I realized that that's not the way to do this. It's not the way to deliver this message. It's not the way to give people an understanding of their true nature and the nature of the experience that we're having here, you know. And don't get me wrong, like, I have a little bit of the fire still. It's still there, but, you know, you get more out of life with honey than you do vinegar. And, you know, there's times for the vinegar, there's times for the spice, there's times for the fire. But when you're all the spice and all the fire, you know, ultimately that will push people away, you know, especially talking about a lot of the things that we talk about. It's, you know, and that's why I'm so grateful to have run into the X community and everybody. We have like this collective now that we can talk about these things. We can bounce these ideas off of each other. You know, we can channel our thoughts, we can work together, and it's been an absolute blessing. So, and that in and of itself has helped me kind of in a way as well to understand that, you know, we're all essentially learning this together. You know, we're all going through this together. We're in this very strange and unknown and uncharted territory for this batch of humanity. And it's a day by day learning experience, you know, and that's one of the biggest things I say. Like, yes, you know, I woke up young, but I most certainly don't have everything figured out. I will be the first to tell you that that I don't even. I mean, I like to think maybe I have like a shred of a hair of somewhat of an understanding when it comes to certain things, but like that hair is very thin and that hair is very blonde. You can barely see it, you know. So it's so but that's the whole premise, you know.
He's got
like,
a baby hair. That's what he's got. A tiny bit. No, I'm joking.
It's a baby hair of a glimpse of an understanding.
I just want to touch on, like, when you were going back to 2020 and that kind of I need to stop saying kind of, by the way, I'm stopping it. My last podcast I did, in like the first 5 minutes, I must have said kind of 13 times. And if you turned it into a drinking game, you'd have been absolutely toasted before you'd have even got halfway through it. So yeah, I'm stopping it right now. Yeah, going back to the original energies of 2020, I think it was all that fear, wasn't it? And I was talking to Kirsten about this earlier. I sent her a message and we were talking about dissonance. And dissonance is actually a gift, because what it does is it causes friction. It's like internal friction within you. And that friction is actually bringing all the stuff up that's just been settled to the forefront of our awareness for us to process. So it really sounds like, if I was going to psychoanalyze your journey, which I am going to do slightly, that you had gone through all this kind of metamorphosis, but you'd still got this internal kind of anger at the system almost. Because it really does make you fucking angry. Because essentially, when you're talking about your sovereignty, they're stripping us of our rights. They're dumbing us down. They're poisoning us. They're making us say please and thank you for the shit they're giving us, basically. And what's not to be angry about? If you're a sovereign individual and you don't want to take that, then you're going to be really angry. But like you said, it's repackaging that in a way that's going to be helpful and beneficial, and that isn't just going to come across as like, you know, look at Stephen, he's this big crazy fucker in the street shouting about like fluoride in water and all the rest of it. It's not going to go down. You've got to package your message so it reaches people on many different levels, and that's the thing with the podcast. You have to make it palatable to a broad spectrum of people, because the message that I've kind of been getting now is that we're going through another awakening process. There's another wave coming. And this is why we're all kind of being pushed to this point now, because we need to be lighthouses, we need to be sovereign, we need to be leading by example, we need to be embodying our practices, we need to not just be talking fluffy spiritual language, we need to actually be sat there doing the work, sharing our processes with people, helping them navigate that, because it's getting quicker and quicker, and they really have to level up really, really quickly. And that's kind of what I'd put it in a nutshell, basically. Go on anyway, somebody else talk.
That's perfect. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. And it's really true. And I think it's, you know, channeling that rage, you know, because like you said, what's not to be enraged about? There's a lot of stuff to bring rage, but we have to channel it in a constructive way. Otherwise, we just burn the whole thing down. And that's really, you know, why they like to incite that sort of rage in us, so that we will just act like nuts and burn everything down. And as Sam knows, I'm the type of person who usually does just burn everything down, but I'm learning to.
You're doing well.
We all have those days. Well. We all have those days. we all have those days where we want. Well, you know, I joke when I sent you guys that thing. You know, essential symptoms be like Sunday, mini dark night of the soul. Monday, I'm on fire, I feel great. Tuesday, burn it all down. Wednesday, emotional wreck. Thursday, burn it all down again. Friday, don't burn it down, it's beautiful, leave it just the way it is. And then Saturday, burn it down again. And it's like, but it's exactly what it is. And what you guys are saying, you know, and let's touch on that while we're talking about this too. I mean, a lot of people, when it comes to their anger, you know, they want to refute it, they want to negate it. And you know, divine anger is a real thing. It really is, you know, and a lot of us woke up through anger. Even you know, our souls were offended. You know, I always talk about that meme. It's like the reason you woke up is because something offended your soul, and that really that does catalyze the awakening. So we have to understand that, you know, anger, although it's not an emotion that we want to hang on to, it's an important emotion. Overall, you know, it does. It's that fire. It's that catalyzation of our remembrance and our realizations and our awakening. And even a little bit of my awakening had some angst to it too. You know what I mean? And it's just a natural part of it. It's what you do with the anger itself that makes the difference. It's if you transmute that anger and you take this energy from this anger to catalyze it, to create this world that you wish to see. Because, you know, one of the reasons we get so angry is we see the world in the way it is, like even like Kirsten was saying, like this clown world that we're this very entertaining carnival show that we call the world stage going on. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we see, you know, it makes us angry, but one of the best things we can do, and we take that anger and we transmute it and we use it to create that world we wish to see, whether it's being the example in the world that we wish to see, the actions, the intentions, the sustainability, the attitude, the mindset, all of it, you know, and that's what you do with that anger. You know, where the anger becomes toxic, where the anger becomes negative is when we hang on to it and we allow it to encompass our being, you know, and it's like you're going to be walking around carrying what feels like a 2-ton sack through life when you're doing something along those lines. So that's one of the things, like, you know, I think, you know, that comes a lot from the love and light, the new age community. Oh, just, you know, don't worry about the anger, ignore the anger and the emotions and things like that. But ultimately, no, sit with it, understand that it's a feeling. You know, understand that you're allowed to feel angry. It's what you should not do for the benefit of your being is carrying that anger with you. Learn how to transmute it. We can definitely dive into some tips and tricks on how to do that if you guys want. And the one thing I wanted to bring up that Sam talked about that I wrote down over here is the walking instead of the talking. Yes, that's something that we're stepping into that right now. I do think there is another awakening coming. I agree with you, Sam, 100%. There's all of this new stuff like really starting to surface. We're getting these downloads, we're getting these upgrades, we're piercing through the layers of these densities, with our healing and the work that we're doing here. We have to embody that, and that's why, like I've always said, I even in the quote in our group chat, it's like embody instead of worship, but when we look at worship, just talking about them is almost in some ways a kind of worship, only talking and not doing. So, it's really, now's the time for action. It's time to really find the way to embody these spiritual principles, to stay in alignment with our divine nature, because yes, we're going to be the stewards for all of these new people waking up, and we have to hold strong, and we have to be these beacons of light here in this reality through whatever we may face collectively, so this is how we're here. We're grounding that energy.
Go on, Kirsty.
I agree. And one of the things that I think the New Age, one of the huge disservices that the New Age doctrine did was to make it not okay to have these negative emotions, because we all have these negative emotions. And as we work to make our energy fields more cohesive, we need to process them and get them out, not push them down. And, well, I'm just going to keep that down under my feet and it'll be fine. No one will see it. And I'm just loving light. Woohoo. And we get into that. And because so many people, I can't tell you how many people have said to me when I have been angry, you're not being spiritual. I thought you were spiritual. And it's like, the ultimate spirituality is authenticity. And if you're angry, then you need to find a way to express that. And I don't mean you should punch people in the face or kick people's teeth down their throat. But although, sometimes it may work, that may help. But most of the time, what you just need to do is process it. And I think that's really important. So yeah, Stephen, let's talk about some ways that we can process that, because I think that's a really important thing for
not kicking people's teeth down the throat. We don't recommend that.
As much as we might feel like we want to do that, as much as we might feel like we might want to do that, we know that's counterproductive to what we're trying. Oh, Joe, trust me. Like even yesterday when I was talking with you guys, I had a few moments where I was like, that's I could feel that, I could have that thought, but that's counterproductive to what we're doing. And one thing I want to touch on before I hop into this, what you were saying, Kirsten, the suppression of that anger, putting it under your feet. Well, this is the thing. If you do that, what's going to happen is the anger is going to start manifesting in forceful ways into your life. And those ways are going to be very nasty. And I experienced that myself because, when I first, woke up, I kind of was on the New Age tip for a couple of years. And, I started to notice it, as much as I would suppress it, it would start to manifest in these very strange and very nasty ways into my life. Situations would start to manifest that had to do with it. I would, a lot of weird things started happening to me. That weird things due to my anger projecting into the universe and it attracting these things because I wasn't addressing it and I wasn't healing it. So absolutely, you do not want to suppress it. You want to acknowledge it. So one of my biggest tips, of course, is having a very sound meditation practice. Okay. And as a sound meditation practice is worth its weight in gold. I would even say platinum, and the one thing I think a lot of people, you can do any kind of meditation you want. All right. That's the number one thing. A lot of people, they get so engrossed in the idea of just sitting in a stationary way and, just calming the mind and, but that's one way to do it. Don't get me wrong, but you can do a walking meditation. You can go outside in nature, do an open-eyed meditation in the woods. The meditation is so versatile. You can just find your niche with it and roll with it. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And I think that's something, a lot of people in our community do is they They try to use other people's experiences as for the norm. But my biggest advice to everybody is have no attachment and allow it to unfold as it's meant to for you. Because, the way I understand might not be the way Kirsten understands. And the way that I understand might not be the way that Sam understands. But we all have that within us, our own subjective way of cultivating that understanding that's special and unique to us. So having a sound meditation practice is definitely key, because what happens when you have a sound meditation practice is you get used to entering something called the state of the neutral mind. Now, we have three minds, technically. We have our negative mind, which in all reality, it's not a bad thing. We need the negative mind. It's part of that balance. And
it's not a negative. I'm just going to cut you off. Sorry, it's critical.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
critical
absolutely.
mind, not negative. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, the critical mind. Good call. That's just the Kundalini version, the way of calling it. It's known as that. But no, you're absolutely right. It's the critical mind. And then you have the positive mind, which when that's out of balance, that's not a good thing either. If your positive mind's out of balance, So and then you have the neutral mind, which is the state of neutrality. It's that flow state. All right. That's actually how we tap into our flow state, is through the neutral mind too. And we can talk about that if you guys want as well. But in the neutral mind, you have a state of non-attachment. So, and when you're in this state of neutral mind and emotions come up, you have the greater capability to allow yourself to feel them and understand them, but not be attached to them. It's because you've trained your mind to kind of bypass the ego portion of it through your meditation practice, because we know the ego, as much as we need it, it likes to clench on to things. It likes to hold on to whatever it can. So that's also the other benefit of the meditation practice and getting into the neutral mind, is that you kind of bypass the ego aspect of your mind a little bit. And now it's not holding on to these emotions. So that's really the first step. And after that, there's a few other things you can do as well. You can start to really do your healing at that point. Okay, why does this make me angry? Because now you're in this objective third-party view of your emotions and your traumas at this point. And now you can actually start asking these questions. What is about this that is still bothering me? What is about this that is still making me angry? What is this, and this? And one thing you'll come to find in the neutral mind state is you're going to get the answers for it almost instantaneously. You're going to be like, this is upsetting me due to this. This is upsetting me due to this and this reason and this trauma that exists within me. So what this does, is it also lets you evaluate your emotions from like almost a third party objective point of view. And this becomes important in the healing, because then you start getting to the keys of why you're feeling this way. You start getting to the reasons and the traumas. And then we can take it a step further. We start to learn how to utilize our solar plexus chakra. That would be the next step, because the solar plexus chakra. The one thing I want to say too is the subtle body system and the chakra system is not metaphysical speculation, guys. Like, this is a very real thing that exists within us. If you guys want, I'll send you the link to my subtle body episode. You can post it at the bottom of the video. But I basically showed you the evidence that this does exist in that video. So take it seriously. Understand this is a real thing you can utilize for your growth and your evolution, and to release and heal yourself. So the solar plexus chakra is known as our divine fire. It's the purifying chakra in our body. It sits at the top of the lower triangle. It is the gateway to the upper triangle, the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. So, we want to establish ourselves in these centers. This is where we want to, but we have to have that balanced foundation on the lower too. And through utilizing your solar plexus chakra, you can take that anger and you can burn it, almost in a sense, or throw it through the fire, so the energy from that anger is purified. And then you start to utilize that new energy now in your heart, your throat, your third eye, your crown, into these higher centers through that purification process. And this is something that we all can do. This isn't restricted to deities. This isn't restricted to gurus and masters. We all have the capability to utilize our subtle body for our healing. So, and that's honestly the the best recipe in my eyes for dealing with the anger and the trauma and utilizing it is understanding this about ourselves, because then we can start to work on releasing this. We can start to work on, that somatic response in our body that works with our consciousness through working with the subtle body system. And it allows you to release those traumas and that anger and utilize them for your highest purpose in life. And I mean, who wouldn't want something like that?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
exactly. Yeah.
Just
And
a few things. Go on, Kirsten. Go on. I've got a note.
All right. I just wanted to say, I think one of the things that meditation really does for people, so many people are so identified with their emotions that they think it's them.
Yeah.
Like it's their identity. I'm mad, so I have the identity of rage. And I think, like you said, Stephen, when you get a good meditation practice, it gives you the ability to recognize that's not really me. That's just like weather. It's like I'm the sky and this is a cloud. It's not the same thing. So yeah, so go on, Sam. What were you going to say?
No, that was brilliant. There's actually a meditation you can do for that. Just, it's a cloud meditation. Look it up. It's quite well known. And basically what you do is if you've got these negative emotions, because sometimes I think it's really important to recognize that depending on what's going on in our lives and where we are, not to beat ourselves up, because there's purging, there's integration. We're not always going to be tip top, even if you've got a meditation practice. Sometimes life just gets in the way, and it's having things in place that you can go, do you know what, I've recognized, because you've done a certain amount of work, you've done a bit of meditation, the states of your mind, what's you, because that's a big thing, isn't it? Identifying what is you and what isn't you without going too much into it. When you say, I am angry, no, you're not angry. You're experiencing anger. You are not the anger that Kirsten said. And it's then, what do you do after that? So it's having different practices, because what I found is the more I've gone on my journey, because when I first started waking up properly, I've been, to be honest, when I was 13, I was writing bloody anarchist poetry, because I was like, you'll never be an enemy of the system and all this stuff. I was full of angst. But obviously, as you get older, I think, touching back on what you said, Stephen, and obviously what Diana had said and things as well, and also Kirsten, her story, you get to a point where you do the spirituality and the healing and the embodiment, and it all kind of comes together. And from that's when you kind of really accelerate your process of it. You get to know yourself better, don't you? So what I'm trying to actually get to is, the more you go along, you will change. Your personality will change. The way that you will respond to certain situations will change, which means you need different practices. So it's great just to start with a meditation practice, but like you said, Kriya yoga. I'm a new convert to Kriya yoga. Steve's got me on the bandwagon with that. I shout it from the rooftops. Kirsten as well. We're like the Kriya yoga crew.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't actually. I really can't wax lyrical enough about how fucking fantastic Kriya yoga is. Honestly, I did it before this podcast. I was like, I feel a bit flat. I did a bit of Kriya yoga. Instantly, 30 minutes later, I'm like, I feel amazing. All my chakras are aligned. And that isn't just like a joke, like a meme,
It's truth. It's truth.
It's true. Yeah, it really is. So tell us a bit about that, Stephen. Tell us a bit about your Kriya yoga journey.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm very happy for you, Sam, for you to have embarked on your Kriya yoga journey as well. And Kirsten, being the practicing yogi she is herself, you guys are so on point. I joke I want to start a Kriya yoga army, man, because it is. You guys, and you've experienced how it works, and I can't begin to tell you. So what made me do it? What kind of originally had me embark on my Kriya yoga journey? I had gotten to a point where I had tried a lot of different practices at that point. I still do Qigong. I've been practicing Qigong now for over 10 years. I still utilize it for certain purposes. Don't get me wrong. It's a very beneficial practice. It's something I recommend everybody give a try. But I got to a point, like you were saying, Sam, it was time to kind of switch it up. It was kind of time to do something new. My being had gotten used to on what was going on. And so actually I had been working with Hanuman, as you both know, for an entire year. And I gave Sam the mantra herself. It is a mouthful and it takes an hour to say every day 108 times. So I would have to break it up through the day sometimes. Like I would do 54 times in the morning on my way to work, maybe like 20 to 30 times on my lunch break. And then when I would get home, I would finish the rest of it. So I could do it like 108 times a day. And I worked with Hanuman for over a year. And Hanuman is actually who pushed me towards Kriya Yoga. He, kind of imparted the idea and the energy into me. And that's when that day, once I was like, I need to give this a try. I'm being called to give this a try. And after my first Kriya session, I was like, oh my God, why have I not been doing this the whole freaking time? Yeah. Like, it was like, it's exactly like, why have I not been doing this the whole time? Because I walked out of that first session with feeling this alignment that was just indescribable. Like it was like almost what I would call a ultra aligned. And after one session, I was like, I have to see where this goes. And I'll tell you this, all right? And this is one thing I was actually saying to my guest on Wednesday. The amount of my healing accelerated like 200 times, 300 times over the course of these almost 2 years I've been doing Kriya Yoga. And it has profoundly changed my life on every single level for the better. I am definitely, my consciousness is in a place that I'm grateful that it's there. I like to think I'm in some yama. It feels like it a lot of the time. I'm a better husband. I'm a better friend. I want to deliver the highest quality human being to everybody that I come into contact with. It has helped me heal. And I've been through some pretty crazy stuff in my life, and a lot of stuff stuck with me throughout the years, a lot of traumas. It has been vaporized at this point. It feels like through this process. And, I joke that if the entire world started doing Kundalini Kriyas, the mental healthcare system as we know it would disintegrate. The physical healthcare system as we know it would disintegrate, because we would have a whole global population of people that are healing themselves physically, emotionally, mentally through this very ancient technique, that works. I even joke and I call it a form of organic technology for the body. It almost seems like it's a form of this organic tech for our body. It works with our energetic system through these different angles we do in the body and these different breathing patterns that kind of work with our endogenous psychedelics. They work with, the somatic response in the body when it comes to releasing trauma. It's almost giving yourself a mini psychedelic experience each day. Is essentially what it is. And it's like almost giving yourself a natural microdose. It's funny because now it's like you don't have to go to your guy to get the fungus anymore. You can just sit here and do this Kriya Yoga session for like 30 minutes and you get a natural DMT microdose from like your own body. And I can't tell you, and you've experienced this, Sam and Kirsten, it's almost instantaneous. It's like after the first session, you feel something different, and you can't help but you're like, I have to entertain what this is. Like, this feels so fantastic. Like, I have to keep entertaining what it is. So, and it's honestly opened the doorway for more remembrances, more realizations, and just this profound level of healing that is, I don't think anything else can give it. That's just my opinion, and I can't say enough good things about it. The only thing I can really say is try it for yourself. Okay. Give it one. You don't even have to do a 30-minute one. Give it one 20-minute one. There's even 10 and 15-minute ones. Give it just one of those. And I guarantee you that you're going to want to entertain what this is yourself.
I want to just, because I am a big advocate now. I really am. I've been converted to the Kriya Yoga cult. It is, it's over for me. So I did it every day for like 25 days or something. I went away and I didn't do it for a week. I felt so rubbish. I was like, oh, I felt brain foggy. And it isn't like I was specifically worse before. It's just I noticed a massive difference. And I think that's another good thing to mention. Like if you have a practice, when you're leveling up and you're going through your kind of you're going through your process, basically, you're becoming more enlightened, aren't you? You get to a point and you think, oh, this is great, but you can't rest on your laurels. You can't go, oh, this is great. I'm here now. I'm just gonna, go back and do what I did before, because it just unravels. And the higher you get, I'm saying high in terms of just like we know where we are. So the higher you get, the more enlightened you get. Obviously, the more lightened your body gets, the more you need to keep at it, because you just can't entertain the other states anymore. And that's the fundamental shift with every practice. I mean, when I first woke up, was first doing proper meditation in 2020, I was meditating for like 6 hours a day. It was ridiculous. But it wasn't sustainable. So I had to find other ways to kind of bring that in and get the same results. But this is really great, because like you said, I've been told by my guide and my tantra teachers and everybody, Sam, you need to do yoga. I'm not fucking doing yoga. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing downward dog and sticking my ass in there and all that shit. And I just completely dug my heels in, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm too fat for yoga. Not going to do it. And I did it. I thought, right, I'm going to give this kriya yoga a go. Everybody's raving about it. Steve's absolutely evangelical about it. So I'm going to try it. And I was just like, oh my God, he's right. I'm never going to doubt him again. This is fucking amazing. So honestly, if anybody's watching this and you entertain the idea of kriya yoga, it's not hard. Anybody can do it. It's just breath work and some little movements, and you will feel absolutely fantastic. So that's my little pitch. We need it in schools.
Really true. It's really true. And that, yeah, it's true. That was my introduction to yoga, but I started doing it in the late 1990s, and I actually stopped when I got into the asana practice for a while, because I was releasing some really deep trauma, and I found the asana practice was really good for that. But I started with Paramahansa Yogananda, and he brought that, and I didn't even know it. I knew it was Kriya Yoga, but I didn't really, but I kind of walked away from it for a while. And I mean, now that I've gotten back to it, I'm just like, why did I stop doing this? But as you've both pointed out, on your journey, you will find at different times, different things will work for you.
Absolutely.
Like you don't just do the same thing always. You find other ways, and you find things that used to work for you don't work for you anymore. And then you find new things. And in my experience, and I'm sure in you guys' experience too, you're really kind of guided to that. You might meet someone like Stephen who'll say, hey, do this Kriya Yoga thing, or something else, or you might just randomly find it, but it'll come to you. It'll come to you what you need to do. You'll always get guidance on practices that will help you where you are at the moment.
Yeah,
absolutely. I would say, and touching on what Sam was saying first, and then I'll touch on what Kirsta said, but you were talking about how, like, you didn't do it for a week and you felt meh and brain foggy and things like that. That the most I've gone without it, I went on a camping trip last August, and I didn't really, just because it was for a wedding. And, there was a lot of festivities going on, and, we were staying up late. The sleep schedule was out, so I didn't get a chance to do it for a few days. But absolutely, I completely resonate with that feeling, because I had it. And, one of the biggest things right now that it offers to us too, even any kind of spiritual practice really, but, especially Kriya Yoga, is kind of that spiritual protection, that spiritual guard too. A lot of these practices crystallize our aura. They build up our spiritual defenses as well. So, and that's something in this time, where the spiritual attacks, the perceived negativity, the darkness polarity that's swaying around in our collective energy at this point in time, it affects us in ways that we haven't even completely realized yet. Like that we, through our healing and our growth, we start to uncover the new ways that it affects us that we weren't aware of. But, having a practice like this, kind of helps. It's like your armored guard. It's like your spiritual Kevlar, almost, if you want to think of it that way, and how, if people don't know, Kevlar is what they use for like bulletproof vests, but like, now you have your spiritual Kevlar now for your spiritual body, your spiritual being, especially for people like us who are very open and who are very sensitive to the energies that are coming in, and we have to, have that grounding, when we go out into this world, especially someone like me who still works a 9 to 5, we have to have that, protection for our energy from other people's energy. A lot of us are empaths, a lot of us are intuitives, and we can pick up on people's energy. We can absorb people's energy if we're not careful. And so having that is almost like, putting on your little spiritual bulletproof vest every day and, kind of getting ready to head on out and, be able to walk into these energies strong and in alignment and grounded and, tapped into the sovereign divinity within us, man. And that's something that can't be underutilized at all at this point in time, and it's not even coming from a fear point of view. It's like, for all of you who are empaths out there, have you ever just walked into a crowd of people who are very low in frequency or low in energy and asleep? You feel that shit on you, don't you? Like, you're like, man, it's like, oh, like,
yeah,
like, it's, and you want to be able to handle that with you want to be able to not only be able to, you're going to experience that regardless, but you're walking into that with that clarity. You're walking into that with that, that extra little bit of, okay, like, this is what's happening to me. This is what I'm experiencing right now. I know that I need to put up my spiritual boundaries, in this case, so I don't absorb any of that energy, around me. So it's kind of like your own little spiritual protection. And what Kirsten was saying too, no, the asana practices are amazing. And like I told you that I've been doing some Ashtanga and things like that as well. And, and that even ties into both what Kriya Yoga and the asana practices do. Is it works with the fascia, it works with our fascia, and that's where our subtle body system is interwoven and is in our fascia. So, and that's where a lot of our awareness is. A lot of people, when we talk consciousness and we talk awareness, everybody gets caught from the neck up. They think just their head, this is where my mind is. This is where my focal point, my sight is. But your awareness, your consciousness is your entire body. Like, you feel,
Yes.
you feel something poke you in the foot, right? That's awareness, right? So because you felt something poke you in the foot, something poked you in the foot, that's awareness. So that just shows that your whole awareness, your whole consciousness is whole body bound. It's not just stuck here. So you want to work with it in that mentality, whole body bound. It's not just your head and your eyes. So then when you do these practices such as Kriya Yoga and Asana Yoga, you're expanding that fascia. So you take expansion. If you're expanding the fascia, you're expanding your awareness. And that's why it's so beneficial for us to do that. I mean, and even for those who maybe are just getting started, even just stretching is expanding the fascia as well. It's kind of like would be like a preliminary if you want to get into, asana yoga and Kriya yoga. So that's why these practices become so beneficial, is because there's that correlation between the awareness, our subtle body system, and the fascia in our bodies. So it's all intertwined. I mean, that's a different kind of trinity, even if you want to think of it that way,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well done.
And
Well done.
that's
That
one
was
that I
brilliant.
think a lot of people in more. Yeah, it really was. It really was. Because I see so many people, like you said, they all want to work up here and they don't want to work down here. And it's like, no, you need the whole thing, the whole thing. And your whole body is what it is, the vehicle that you are here to interact with it. So we really need, and you really need, if you're only working up here, you're actually asking for psychosis, because if you're not well grounded, if you don't have a good grounding in your lower triangle, your upper triangle, you're just going to be like, woo, I'm going to float.
Yeah.
And that was a problem I had for many years, because I was always really spiritual, but I was always floating off into space, because I couldn't ground. So yeah, any physical practice will help you ground and help you to move the energy through you. and process the emotions and everything. And it's perfect. And the other thing I wanted to touch on that you said, Stephen, about making your getting that protection, the more cohesive you can make your aura, the more protection you'll have, the less you will be susceptible to psychic attacks, or even just people who vibrate at a much lower frequency and kind of tend to drag you down. And that's why authenticity is so important too, because if you have all these warring things in your field, it's not cohesive. And when you're really living your truth and speaking your truth and walking your truth, your field becomes far more cohesive. And when you add those practices to it, it really is a good protection.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I just want to add to that. When you go into a crowded place, there are things you can do, because obviously when you're open and you're empathic, the more work that you do, the lighter you get and the more expanded you are. So if you imagine it feels like a ball around you, the more work that you do gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you're touching everybody and it's like, holy shit, everybody's in my field. So you can use practices like, where you imagine golden light coming from your crown all the way around you. You can project out, going back to that solar plexus, which is your fire and your alchemical fire. So you can alchemize anything that's coming in through that and then put it back out, essentially. And that's going to help you. And just touching on what Kirsten said, it is really about being in balance, because when you are balanced within your body, your emotions, your mind, things can't get in because you're not out of alignment, essentially. And that's the same thing when you're balancing your chakras, because each chakra is related to a different part of your body. It's related to a different subtle body. And by doing things like meditation and putting your conscious awareness into each layer, because the more you meditate, the more you go inwards, the more you're able to form kind of a cohesive bond with every cell in your body. And I think this is the kind of thing when we talk about the chakras being real, they are real. They're absolutely real. Anybody that's done the practice and you've gone inside, you know that your body has its own consciousness. Your organs have their own consciousness, and they are all touched by the fascia. And that is the glue that basically, it's like the cosmic highway that allows your consciousness to move into the physical vessel. And that's why when you build a rapport and a relationship with it, you start to be able to heal yourself, essentially, because you can see where trauma's stuck, you can see where you've got blocks, you might get things like pains in your wrists or whatever, and you can actually breathe into that with your conscious awareness, and your body will tell you what's wrong, essentially. So it's building up this relationship with your body.
I would 100% agree with everything you just said, Sam. And, I have a saying for that balance. It's an interesting saying, but it's like, you can have your head in the clouds, but as long as your feet are on the ground.
Yeah.
And, that's the balance of that too, as with, Kirsten was saying as well. When you get stuck in the high, and one of the reasons why I think so many people in our collective focus on the higher centers at this point in time. So it's the over imbibing in the Lucifer energy. And that's because when we look at the Lucifer energy, it's not all bad. It's an important energy, things like that, and at least in that aspect. But and I've talked with Diana about this, the reciprocation between the Lucifer energy and the Christ consciousness as well. But when you over imbibe in the Lucifer portion of that energy, what ends up happening is you become one of those people who are like, oh, I'm done being a human. I want to go back to the higher realms. Like I'm done with this physical form and things like that. And, one of the biggest things I say to people, like, no, you chose to come here and be a human. You chose to be here and help us during this time. If you didn't choose that, you would not be here. And to me, that's one of our biggest tests to pass here, is fully embracing this experience. You know what I mean? So fully embracing our humanity in its fullest extent, to me, is one of the biggest tests. Negate. Yeah. You agree? You agree? I'm glad you guys agree in that.
I agree. Yeah. Well, if you're not supposed to be here, if you're done being here, you will die. You will.
That's pretty much all there is to it, right? It's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's
you're
the
not
thing,
dead,
isn't it? When
you're
you,
here.
oh, go on. Sorry, Kirsten.
You're
Well, I
here.
was just
You're
going
meant
to
to be
say,
here.
when you're
You're
going,
not dead.
oh, I'm still talking over you. Go on.
Go ahead. No. Talk.
Sorry. How bloody rude of me. I'll snap my hands. Right. What I was saying is, so even when you look at the people in like the Tibetan monks and they're working towards the rainbow light body, they've still got to purify their bodies and they're still aware of the physical reality that they're in. And then when they're ready to leave, they're still, they're going somewhere else essentially. And that's the thing. Like, people are scared to death, but they don't want to be here. And I just can't get my head around that. But yeah.
It is. Well, and that's why embracing your humanity is the best thing you can do, because being a human being is a very special thing. You know what I mean? Like we can dive into this later, but if you guys want, but I don't think, the human form's originally from here. There's a lot of things that kind of tie into that, are even being a human ourselves is of an otherworldly origin. So like, for everybody who wants to get obsessed with that, look at it from that perspective. Like, yes, the human being is a very interesting thing. It's yes, we have the consensual narrative of history of where we came from, but we can look at that and be like, that's a crock of crap. It doesn't make any sense. So, where did we come from? Where are we really from? This human form, this human body. So the human body itself is otherworldly. So look at it from that perspective, and that's part of embracing your humanity as well, and making your humanity more whole, and that even comes like for the topic of like star seeds and angel seeds, I get it, I am one, I understand, but do I live in that identity in this existence? No, I don't live in that identity in this existence. All that does for me is it shows me that, okay, I know a little bit more about the history of my nature, and that is going to help me utilize all of the energetic aspects of this existence I can in the here and the now. And that's the perspective we should be having with it, because yes, I mean, don't get me wrong, star seeds and angel seeds are a thing. I am one, but you don't see me hopping on going, I am the angel seed, this and this Stephen of BGCast. No, I'm just
We
Stephen
should have
of
introduced you like that. That's what we should have done. We should have put it in the list.
Well, my list of demands was already too much, so I had to scale back on the list of demands. So, that's what it is, though. It's like, it's yes, that's cool. Like, that's an amazing thing about you. Understand that that's supposed to contribute to the power that you have now. Okay,
yeah.
You've unlocked this aspect of yourself, and you have this, whether it be a higher self, a parallel existence of yours, or that's or you are you came here from a higher realm. That's cool, but you're here to do work, and take that knowledge and take that power of that realization and channel it into what you're doing now. And I think if more people look at it from that perspective, we would have less of the starseed influencers, and we would have a lot more healing going on that note. So
yeah, I just want to touch on that. I think the issue is, I am going to talk. Sorry, I'm being rude now. No, I'm not even sorry. Yeah, so the issue that I've got is a lot of people, they need a box to put themselves into, and it's kind of like they're on this spiritual awakening, and they're trying to figure out who they are, and it's like, oh, I'm a starseed, or I've had this alien experience. It's like, look, we've all had these alien experiences, you know what I mean? You're not special. There's loads of them. They're all over. There's more than there's bloody us at this point, I'm convinced. But it's just knowing that we're multidimensional beings. We really are. And when you start again to do meditation, to expand your consciousness, you begin to perceive there's more layers and more dimensions, and there's more of you that you are bringing in. And the reason that you become aware of it, like you very aptly put, Stephen, is that it's to help us now. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent now. It's become more and more apparent. I don't like saying ascension, because I think it's become a bit of a spiritual buzzword. But just for the sake of saying it, we are on this path now of soul evolution, And I've been told we are becoming a spiritualized human. And why it's so important that we are so physically in our bodies is it's the next evolution of where we're going. It's the next iteration of the human development, essentially the evolution of where we're going. And that is taking the physical body, making it lighter and more crystalline, and moving into the next dimension without going all woo. But you need to physically be in your body and do the work and bring the light into your body. And you can only do that by being present in it.
Absolutely. I would absolutely 100%. And you hit the nail on the head, Sam. And that is what we're moving towards, you know. And you have to understand your body is also an expression of your consciousness. And that's why I don't like I know you two don't like it too, so we can go on that forever. But the soul is not in the body. The soul has a body. That's kind of the way we want to look at it. That's the perspective that we want to approach it from, because then you understand that what you just said, Sam, makes a world of sense. You know, like we have to be in that present with it, you know, and that's something that, you know, some of the spiritual teachers of old, that I disagree with some of them, that they like to separate the physical and the spiritual. We know that it's all one, right? Like it's all a manifestation. It's all an expression of the all is mind, the one, right? So like even the physical nature of these things, this physical world. And that's why, as much as I love Gnosticism, I can't get down with the physical world being completely and inherently evil, because it's you know, why it's all of the monad. It's all of the all. Like it's a part of this divine creation. And while yes, you know, whether you want to view this physical existence as a prison, a playground, a school, you know, whatever you choose to view it as, I wouldn't want to view it as a prison. That's just, you know, that's going to make for a mucky time here. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, it's your body, being in tune with your body is being in tune with the spiritual. And that's why you should take care of your body too, you know, and that's where I think, you know, we're entering in right now and when I say new age, I don't mean new age from the new age movement, but we're entering in a new age. We're in a different age where, you know, new ways are going to form to cultivate that connection with the divine. You know, we're kind of the frontiers men and women of this unknown and uncharted territory for this current batch of humanity. You know, we are the scientists, the explorers, the pioneers, the journalists, the podcasters, really whatever you want to put it. Like we're all the frontiersmen and frontierswomen of this. So, you know, we have to understand that it's all encompassing. The physical is just a shadow of the spiritual. You know, it's all one. So being in tune with your body in that present moment is what's going to gear you towards that next evolution. And I was talking with you guys in the group chat. I want to bring this up in the theory. I do think the next point of it is we're going to tap into that spiritual body. You know, that I called it in the chat the in-between state, is kind of what I called it. But that kind of falls flat in describing it. I think we're going to have the capability to become energy if we choose, but we are also going to have the capability to be physical if we choose. It's going to have a kind of a crossover, you know, and that even just ties into what Sam was saying and what I was saying at this point in time, you know, because if your soul has a body, then you know that your body has this energetic component to it too, because we look at our conscious soul, which is that energy of consciousness. So I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to, you know, I don't know when it's going to happen. You know, I never put dates on anything or, you know, time periods. I'm not saying it's going to happen by August 11th, 2040 or anything along those lines. But I think that's the next step we're going to start experiencing, you know, as we go farther in our spiritual evolution. And I like how you use evolution, Sam. That's the term I like to use now too. You know, it makes more sense to me, because when you look at terms like ascension, enlightenment, things like that, they carry the stigma with them. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's it's rising above, but really we're rising within. Like that's really, we're not rising above anybody here. We're rising within. We're understanding that, since birth we've been conditioned to look outside of ourselves for validation, love, the answers to the bigger questions in life, authority, all of this stuff. From the day we're born into this physical existence, we're conditioned to look without, but really it's all within. Everything I just mentioned is within. So that's what it is. I like the evolution, and that's why I do call it indeed the spiritual evolution, because that's what it is. We're evolving ourselves through our healing and our inner work to be able to access these higher states of being, these higher states of consciousness, to bring ourselves closer with our true divine nature and unification with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kirsten, did you have something to say on that? Because I cut you off last time. It was a bit rude.
No, I think it's very well said, and I agree. I have received similar guidance. The guidance I got was, we're going into a different dimension, and we'll still be able to come to this dimension, but we won't have to live there all the time, which kind of, and now I'm saying kind of, Sam. It really does suggest that same thing, that we will be moving more into having a more energetic existence. I mean, everything is energy now, but we will be more able to manipulate that energy and use it the way we want to, and we don't have to embody physically all the time.
Can I just say, oh, go on, sir, I've cut you off again. We're still getting used to this podcast thing.
No problem, guys.
We'll nail it eventually. It's fine. Yeah,
we'll figure it out. We fly by the seat of our pants on here.
It's why people like us. We're real.
Aren't we all just winging it anyways? I mean, that's really where we're all just making it up as we go. It's all good.
We are. That's life. Isn't that life?
So Stephen is like a proficient podcaster, seamlessly manages his podcast every week. Yeah. You do actually do a very good job, I've got to say. So if nobody's checked him out, if you've got any new people that are new to Stephen BGCast, I really would recommend, because the one thing that I do want to bring up, Stephen, is I really like your dedication. I know you really speak about really presenting ourselves in a good way, because you've got this message, and it's, all jokes aside, we need to reach people now. This is the time. It's not to wake people up, but it's to be able to give the information that's required, really, because it's essential, in a way that's going to be received, and that we're not going to look stupid, we're not going to look like idiots, not going to look like we're living in clown world. And it's like, how do we do that? Well, we do it by presenting ourselves in I don't even know, you probably say it really, but go on, you talk about it. You say it much better than I do.
So one of the biggest things I say, especially when, and you're right, it's not about waking people up. It's about, I just wrote it down, extending our hands to them when they wake up. And really what it is, a lot of people, when we, and I can even think of, when I first woke up, and some of the things I was feeling and experiencing, like, you have that almost that argument with your ego, and it's like, it's like, how are you believing this shit, but you're experiencing this at the same time. So what the reason why, we want to refine ourselves when we present our message, is because, number one, we already have the mainstream doing everything they can in their power to discredit people like you and I. They don't want people looking at the middle path. They want people either caught up in nihilistic atheism or dogmatic religion. They try to make that seem like the two options for people. No, you have more options, everybody. Trust me, those aren't the only two. But that's one of the biggest things. So when we present ourselves in a way where we're educated, intelligent, well-spoken, in alignment with the values that we embody and that we practice, it creates a different atmosphere for those who are just, might be entertaining this, waking up, being like, I'm experiencing this. And, the saying, you eat with your eyes before you actually take a taste. You know what I mean? And that's how, a lot of people look when they're looking to somebody who's relaying a message, especially if the message that we relay, we talk about healing ourselves. We talk about embodying these teachings, this love, this alignment, and you portray yourself in a way that's different than that, and it almost kind of, it does a disservice to the message. It does, and that's why, like, don't get me wrong, guys. I like to smoke cannabis. I like to take psychedelics. Like, I like to do those things. Don't get me wrong. But when I do my show, that's not the time that I do those things, because I want to go up there and I want to deliver the highest quality human being I can to everybody who's sitting there with me when I go live and everybody that's listening to me. I want to be articulate. I want to be on my A game because I'm breaking down these complex esoteric topics, even though they're not complex, when we understand them, and they're actually quite simple. But for those who are just starting, of course, it appears complex. So, you want to create an environment, a welcoming environment for those who are just getting interested. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I have such a problem with mainstream spirituality and a lot of the spiritual egotism that exists in our community. And it's doing everything a disservice. It's doing it, and we have these people, these high follower accounts or whatever, who act like they are God's gift to the existence. You know what I mean? And that only their intel's the right intel, only my channelings are the only right channelings. And if you don't listen to my intel and you don't listen to my channelings, or you question them, you must just be a sleep or a normie or a low frequency human being or things like this. This is not what we need to be doing right now. It's not, you know what I mean? And we have to, the number one thing is we need to start looking at each other as a family. You know what I mean? And that is the number one thing. We're all part of this conscious collective. We're all part of this family. What forges the bond between us is that we are all experiencing this shared experience that is above words. It's words don't do what we're experiencing here justice. But that's the commonality and the resonance that we have with each other in this community, is we are connected at that soul level through this experience. And that's why I look at Kirsten as a sister in arms. I look at Samantha as a sister in arms, in this great awakening that we're in right now. And I look at all of my other people: David, brother in arms; Dawn, Diana, sister in arms; Don, brother in arms. All of these people. And that's how we need to be viewing it, because the number one thing that they don't want you to realize, the parasite class does not want you to realize, if the conscious collective stopped fighting with each other and we got on some kind of unified front, some kind of unified common goal in helping shift the frequencies of this planet to accelerate us to the best possible timeline, it would be end game. It would be absolutely end game. The parasite class would not stand a chance. We would literally be casting mountains into the sea. Like, we literally would. I'm not even joking about that. That's not even trying to pump it up. We would literally have the power to do that at that point. So, and that's why I, try to be the way I am. That's why I try to be that friendly face. I try to be that accepting face, because, like I said, I might have woken up in 2008. I might have been doing this for 17 years. I don't have it all figured out, guys. I don't. I wouldn't lie to you and tell you that I did. New things reveal themselves to me about this existence and my nature on a daily basis. So for me to come out and tell you I got it all. No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Were you say, Kirsten? Go ahead.
No, okay. I was just going to say, that's one of the reasons why I trust you, Stephen. I wanted to say earlier when you introduced yourself, I don't trust people who say, I know everything and this is the way it is, because I know that they're deluded. Because I've been on this path for, more than 2 decades, we'll say.
Longer than me,
more than 2 decades. And I don't know a damn thing. I know that and what I tell you today may change tomorrow. So I really think it's important to, like you said, for people to stop saying, oh, I know it all because I got to this level and I know it now. There's always another level. And what you know now may be stupid tomorrow. And if you're not willing to admit that and allow that and stop being attached to everything that you know, you're not actually going to make much progress, and you're not a fit leader for people who are trying to make real progress. So that's one of the things I really admire about you, Stephen, and you are that friendly face. I think you are.
I appreciate that. Well, because that's the thing, it's to claim that you would have this all figured out is to me, that's like the biggest mental gymnastic anybody can do. I even when I was younger, and you guys have heard me talk about the divine backhand, because the divine will backhand you when your britches get too big. It will, and that's the best way I describe it. But there would be times when I was younger where I think I would have something figured out, and the divine backhand would come and be like, "Oh, you thought you did, you thought you had it figured out, but look, you really don't." And I would be like, and that's kind of what, it instilled that humbleness into me, was understanding that this is the spiritual evolution only goes up. There's no stopping point. There's no level that you reach. There's no plateau that you hit. It is everlasting, ever going. And it's going to always, as you grow and your perspective grows too, as we grow and we evolve, our perspective grows too. And that's, what we, like you were saying, Kirsten, what we know is truth today might not be what we know is truth tomorrow. It's ever flowing, ever growing. And that's the mentality that we have to take with this evolution, because the minute we start to think we have it all figured out, that's the minute we stagnate ourselves. That's the minute we trap ourselves, like you were saying, compartmentalizing ourselves into this box, this identification. I identify with this train of thought and this train of thought only. Well, how do you know that train of thought's going to service you for the remainder of your spiritual evolution? Like, how do you know you can move past that? And one thing I see a lot of is people just clutching to these, their old beliefs, their old things. They don't want to make, I call it the spiritual drawing board. I can't tell you, I've been back to the spiritual drawing board now at this point. Probably, I can't even count on my hands and toes anymore how many times I've been back to the spiritual drawing board, because I will go forward in my evolution. Something new will present itself to me that shatters an old paradigm that I might have had some stock and faith in. And I'm like, all right, back to the spiritual drawing board. We got to toss this one out. We got to start drafting up something new now. This is this. But that's, but that's the beauty of this experience, though, too, is there's always surprises in store for you. You know what I mean? It's like there's always something amazing around the corner. It's almost like being a kid in a candy store when you take that kind of perspective. You know what I mean? The divine's going to when you stay open to that growth and you stay open, the divine's going to give you that candy. It's going to be like, all right, like you're accepting the candy. Great. Now, of course, sugar's bad for you. Don't do candy, always do fruit, but you get the example. Like, you know what I mean? It's going to reciprocate. And that's one of the biggest things, that the biggest piece of advice that I could give to anybody on this evolution is to always stay open. Always stay open to what the divine is showing you. Stay open to how it communicates with you. Stay open and never clutch onto something that doesn't service you anymore, because all that's going to do is it's going to make you stagnate. You're not going to improve. You should, and I get it. Sometimes having your paradigm destroyed in an intense way, it can be fragmenting. But I promise you, if you keep yourself open, it's not going to be as fragmenting, because in that way you're adapting. You're like, okay, I was wrong. I could admit to myself I was wrong. That's okay. Let's pull up our big boy pants and let's move forward. Now we have this new information that's presented itself to us, this new remembrance, whatever. Let's start off. There's no shame in going back to the spiritual drawing board, man. There's no shame. The best of us have done it countless times.
Yeah. I loved that. Well done. I was listening. I had a bit of a dog emergency. I had to run off.
Yeah, oh, no worries. Yeah. I know how that is.
I love her, but she's a very demanding princess. Yeah. I liked what you said about we have these tower moments, don't we? And I think the more you go along this journey, obviously the big one is the awakening. We have these big dark. Or most people that I've spoken to have a dark night of the soul, and it's this friction. And I talk about friction and it basically makes us more uncomfortable than the comfort that we're in, and that's why it has to be so kind of pushing. Because I think when you're just first waking up, if you didn't have one of these kind of like life altering moments, you just be oh bugger that. I can't be dealing with like aliens or fluoride in the water, or I can't, they'd be like, yeah, bugger that. So you need this catalytic moment. And I do want to touch on something that you talk about, which is the conspiracy theories. So we all start out, don't we? And we start in this conspiracy theory movement, or people might start a new ufology movement or whatever. But I think the thing is, it's all funneling us to the same point, which is spiritual awakening, essentially. So it's not getting stuck in the nuts and bolts, which is what you were basically saying. We're in this constant evolution of our knowledge, understanding, abilities even, because the more we go, the more abilities. If you'd have said to me telepathy was real 10 years ago, you're going to go, maybe. But then I've had telepathic experiences. So this is what I mean. It really is opening your mind, because if not, you're limiting yourself so much from so many experiences that are out there.
Well, that's right.
Conspiracy
boxes.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Sorry, Kirsten, were you saying? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, release the boxes. And now we're doing it. Now go ahead. No, go ahead. Were you saying? Go ahead. So that's it. So no, absolutely. And I'm going to quote from my guest Emily Moyer, because she hit the nail on the head with this. Is yes, the conspiracies are true, but that's not the ultimate point. Yeah. And you notice at the end of every rabbit hole, there's you. Right. And that's the other thing I want to say. The end of every rabbit hole, there's you. So the conspiracies, yes, like we were talking about earlier in the episode, the conspiracies help wake us up. They're a pivotal part in helping us get to where we are right now. And the thing I'm going to say, though, is like, well, yes, you want to visit them. Like maybe you want to take a 3-day trip there. Maybe you want to buy a timeshare there or something like that. Maybe you want to take a little boat journey over, but it's not a place that you want to stay. And the reason why is because, number one, all right, the conspiracies have their own stagnancy to them. And one of the biggest things the issues that I have with the conspiracy and the truther community right now is their quest for truth does not walk hand in hand with a spiritual one, or at minimum, the path of the good person. Because when we have our quest for truth walk alongside a spiritual one, what happens is the spiritual one conditions us and helps us heal and gets us to a place where we can handle these new truths that we find and these new realizations in a way that doesn't destroy us or send us on a downhill negative spiral into black pill land. You know what I mean? And that's one of the biggest things that I see with a lot of the truther in the community, the truther and conspiracy community. Everything's doom and gloom. We're doomed. We're screwed. We might as well just bend over and kiss our asses goodbye, because it's only a matter of time. And this is just kind of what I see consistently from this community. And of course, now that the conspiracies have been mainstream, I joke about, and I'm sure Kirsten can understand this too a little bit, like back in like 2016, 2015, 2016, all of us in the conscious collective at the time were like, is it going to be a weird thing when conspiracies are mainstream, man? I'm like, wow, that's going to be really cool. And then I look back now and I'm like, man, what the hell were you saying back then, dude? What were you thinking? Because now they have control over that narrative. Now they have control it now because it's mainstream.
It's the same with the weed. No.
Exactly.
Yeah, the weed, you know, and we could talk about weed for sure. No, but that's kind of what has happened. And you know, I always use the cake analogy, and for those who have watched my show, they know what it is. But for those who not, so like, think of this giant cake, right? Like, you know, you could even think of like a triple decker wedding cake, like, you know, whatever you want. And the conspiracies and the geopolitical aspect of what's going on right now is just the very thin layer of icing on the top of this cake. And I mean, essentially what you want to do is you actually want to have a piece of the cake. You want to cut yourself a slice and you want to see what's inside the cake. And, you know, and you're going to, I mean, that's what we've done. We've been like, hell, dude, let's cut open this cake. Let's see what it has to offer. Let's see what's in it. And then the biggest thing I see a lot of right now is like, you'll see people like us who are like, hey guys, you really need to see what's in this cake. This cake is freaking awesome. Like, it's beautiful. And they're like, no, the icing's fine. The icing's fine right now. And you know, that's the mentality we see. And that's why we're supposed to move past these conspiracies. You know, the conspiracies are supposed to point us towards the fact that there is a underlying spiritual nature to our existence. Okay. I mean, you look at the freaking, I mean, God, look at let's talk about this conspiracy. Let's look at the reptilians. Let's look at the child sacrifice, the blood, all of that has occult and spiritual stuff tied into it, right? Like, all of these are occult and spiritual concepts, right? So that's kind of pointing at you in the face right there. You know, like, yes, this is a conspiracy, but it is interwoven and it's intertwined with all of this occult and spiritual things. Like, you know, this is a spiritual concept. Like, so, you know, that's my biggest advice to people, you know, is yes, the conspiracies are fine. I'm not saying it's when you stay there, you don't move forward, you don't gain the understanding. But the other thing too that we see also is that there's a lot of people who are afraid of that accountability, though. Like, you know, and that's one thing, because when you start to find out the spiritual nature of this existence, and you start to find out that you're the source of 99% of the things that happen to you, all of the consequences, everything you create your whole reality. You know, for a lot of people, it's the accountability factor, and but the one thing is that's moving from the victim mentality and into the creator mentality, the empowerment mentality.
Yeah.
Overcoming that, because now you're like, okay, yeah, I am the source of all of what I'm doing. I am the source of my creation. I am the creator in creation. I'm not a byproduct of it, you know, and it's the most empowering thing. Go ahead, were you say something?
No, I was just going to say, you just basically said it. That's what it is. It's a fear of accountability, because when you start to look at your own shit, you're like, oh, actually, I've done this to myself. And it's a really uncomfortable place to be. But also, if you flip it on the head, and this is obviously going a bit into positive land, you can always get a positive out of it, because essentially what you're doing is you're empowering yourself. You can say, do you know what? I've completely created a car crash of a life, you know, and I've been there several times. But then you have these massive tower moments. You know, you've been struck by lightning, the rubble of your life's around you. You start crying with your mascara down your face into a full cake. And then you're like, right, what are we going to do about this? Because, you know, then you've got the power. Well, I'm not going to eat this cake because this isn't going to serve me, for a start. And it's just taking one step. And that's the thing. That's what I would say to anybody. You will have these massive catastrophic moments. We all do, when your life will literally be taken apart. And the thing is, it's riding those waves. And the more that you do it, you can see it coming a mile off, you know, especially the more you've been to it. You're like, oh, I did for a tower moment here. It's coming. What can I do? What am I in resistance to? That's the first question. What am I holding on to really, really tightly that I need to let go? Absolutely. Is it these beliefs? Is it the conspiracy theories? I love the cake analogy, because you know what? It has to be a pretty cake. It has to have beautiful frosting, because it pulls us in. And that's the whole point of it. You know, we go, oh, look at that cake. Look at them 15 tiers or whatever. Let's go and see what black pills underneath this. And then you start digging into it, and it's got you then, you know. And hopefully what's going to happen is you start looking at this cake, and then it's going to give you diarrhea, essentially, because it's a load of shit. And then you're going to go, well, what's underneath all this? Why have I got this diarrhea? And then you're like, oh, look, it's the spiritual nature of reality. And there you go, you've arrived.
Absolutely.
There
I mean,
you
you don't have to agree with that.
And both of you, Well, both of you hit on what I was thinking about. A lot of these conspiracy theories, it's very disempowering, and that's why they brought them mainstream, because if you just sit back and go, oh my gosh, this parasite class, they've got all the resources, they've got everything, they control the armies, they control everything. I can't do anything. I'm just going to sit here and be freaked out for the rest of my life. And
Yeah.
you have to get beyond that, because, and once you start saying, wait a minute, I've created this, that's the moment when you actually take your power back. And it's not to say that other people haven't had a hand in creating that. And obviously they've been creating things unbeknownst to us for a long time with our energy. But it's taking back that energy and saying, okay, well, I'm not going to put my energy into these conspiracy theories anymore, because I'm giving them the power to continue doing this by placing my attention here. So where am I going to put my attention? And yeah, we need to know what's going on. We need to know this stuff, but we don't need, as Stephen said, we don't need to live there. That's not where we should be living. Look at it. I mean, sometimes it's fun mind candy to go down those rabbit holes, but climb back out, or, find the places where you still have the power and make those into more places, because every step you take towards taking back your power makes you more powerful. And
Absolutely.
Eventually they won't be able to create these things, because they don't have the power. We have the creative power.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Well, the one thing, so this is, I want to recommend a documentary for everybody to watch, especially on this note, because there's back when I first woke up, they had the original, some of the most original documentaries that came out. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Esoteric Agenda. A lot of people have heard about the documentary Zeitgeist. That's a very popular one. But there's one lesser known one that actually hits exactly on the point that Kirsten was saying, and it's called Kymatica. And in Kymatica, it basically what Kirsten said, it said, well, yes, there is a parasite class in this world that takes advantage of us. We're ultimately the ones allowing it to happen. And that's the whole premise of this documentary, Kymatica. In fact, out of anyone, I would even recommend you ditch Zeitgeist and you ditch Esoteric Agenda and you just watch Kymatica at that point, because that is where your focus and your premise needs to be. Well, yes, and that's what I mean. Yes, the conspiracies are true, but that's not the point. Also, is like, well, yes, we have a parasite class that takes advantage of our ignorance, and does these things to us and tries to manipulate, control us, and all of that. We're ultimately the ones allowing it to happen. We are. So, and when you take that perspective, you truly start to see and you start to understand that the power does exist within you. Even just one person is powerful enough to elicit a massive change in this reality and in this world. Now imagine if everybody realized that just one person had enough power to elicit a massive change and response in this world. And that's ultimately what it is. It's the one thing I would say from the swap from the conspiracies to the spiritual evolution is leaving the victim mentality and entering being a creator in creation. Because when you're in the victim mentality, you're a bystander, you're a byproduct of creation. And even though I'm not really a fan of him anymore because he went with the 2020 COVID narrative, Sadhguru has one really good point that he makes. And it is, you have the ability to be a creator in creation, not a byproduct of it. And that is the swap from the conspiracies to the spiritual evolution. It is leaving being a byproduct of creation and becoming a creator in creation. And why wouldn't you want to do that? And it's like, why wouldn't you want to be a creator in your own creation? I mean, that's ultimately what we are. We're these creator beings. We're these divine, we're these subjective focal points, this divine consciousness, having an individualized expression so it can undergo these multiple subjective experiences to learn about itself and to grow and evolve on its own. So you have to think that if the creator is within you, that means you too are a creator. If you choose to acknowledge that and you choose to remember and realize that. So that's ultimately too, what I feel getting too caught in the conspiracies does to people is you're relinquishing your creation power and becoming a byproduct of creation itself.
Yeah.
It's ultimately making that swap. And that's the biggest thing that is going to shift this paradigm and change this for us. Because yes, I'll tell you, I get up every morning and I see it as a wall sometimes, like everything that we're going is wall, and it spans the entire third dimension. It's from top to bottom, left to right, and yes, it seems like this wall is impenetrable sometimes. We have these moments, but we're pushing that wall back now. The wall must not be impenetrable. It must not be impossible to move, because we're pushing it back now. We're pushing it further into the densities, into the higher densities. We're getting ready to get rid of it altogether. So, while yes, if you look at everything from the victim mindset, it seems bleak, but when you make that shift into being a creator, you realize I now have the power to be the change I want to see in this world. And even just you making that small change within yourself, it causes a cascading effect through the human collective consciousness, and that ripples, and it starts to affect everyone around you and everything around you. Your whole entire reality starts to shift and change, and to see and that's even, don't discount the power of the human being. Our thoughts create different timelines. Our actions ripple into the consciousness field. We are powerful, and we should embrace that, and we should, have self-love for that. And so that's ultimately that's exactly what I'm saying. Yep.
Yeah. No, I just want to. So have you heard of the hierarchy of consciousness? There's they've got one in vibration level, don't they? So I don't know. There's one that's courage is higher than anger or whatever. But there's one that goes on a person's level of consciousness, which I saw recently. And apparently, there were so many masters on the earth. It was 13 masters, and they were at a certain level. And what happens is that when you do more work and you raise your level of consciousness, you are essentially doing it for the people as well. So if you've raised your consciousness to a certain level, you will negate the level of consciousness of, I don't know, 50 people, 100 people, whatever, the more that you do that work. And that's the thing. That's why if everybody that was awake did the work and concentrated on healing themselves and becoming more sovereign and aligned with their true nature, it would just automatically raise the level of the consciousness of the planet anyway, because this is what we're seeing now. I mean, Gaia, Mother Earth, is raising her consciousness. I don't know how you guys feel about that. That's really what I believe.
100% I feel it is.
Yeah, definitely. So just the base level of consciousness on the planet at the moment is now apparently at, is it courage or something like that, which is we've tipped into the next bracket. We're no longer at a negative base frequency. So this is what I mean. We are ascending. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I've heard of that. I've heard of that. I have.
Well, it really confirms, because I have noticed over, because I've been here a couple more decades than you guys. I have noticed that the whole frequency of the planet has raised tremendously since I was a child.
Absolutely.
And the consciousness of the planet has gone up tremendously. So I fully agree with that. I have, experienced that and also it's gotten so much easier to expand your consciousness than it was, say, in the 1980s. Because the actual vibration supports that more than it did at that time. So, absolutely. I mean, look at when they channeled the law of one, everything that they had to do to channel that, they had to set up this whole thing with the with the altar, and everything had to be in exactly the right spot. And she had to, what was her name? Carla Ruckert had to be put into a certain place and into a trance. And now channeling is much easier. All you have to do to channel is open up to it and just sit back and open up. I mean, I don't go through this huge process when I channel. I just close my eyes and take a few deep breaths, and here we go. And that right there shows you the difference in the consciousness of the planet, because it's not that difficult anymore to do that. And we are much more supported in expanding our consciousness now than we were, 30, 40 years ago. So
100%. I agree. And I feel it too, and yes, that's why we're in, like I said, we're in this new age. A lot of new things are showcasing themselves to us. And you can see the frequency of the planet has increased and I say it is because of us, all of the work that we've done here. And, because I've talked about this before with others, but like, I've never recently, I see so many people, like I'm walking down the street the other day, right? I'm leaving my office and I'm walking by this couple and they're having this conversation about the spiritual nature of reality. And in that moment, I was just like, I had almost this peace come over me, because I was like, okay, all right, this is happening. This is go time. Hell yeah. And it's I've seen so many people, guys, even if they might not have the whole bigger picture in their minds just yet, but so many people getting into meditation, yoga, being self-sustainable, learning how to, sourdough, exactly, sourdough, freaking, homesteading, tarot, crystals, a lot of people are getting it. I even have my crystal here with me today, and freaking, but a lot of more people, we can see, excuse me, the effects of the work we're doing now beginning to subtly manifest themselves in the collective consciousness of humanity. And it's an amazing thing. And that's why I say there's two aspects to what's going on right now. We have the conscious aspect and then the subconscious aspect of the awakening. The conscious aspect being people like you and I, who are, these energetic light posts, these energetic beacons that are grounding the higher frequencies here into our conscious collective, terraforming the planet into higher frequencies. And now what's starting to happen is, because of all of the work that we've done, we're starting to see it manifest. And that's the thing about third density. And I think really that's one of the things, as we start to shift more and more, I think it's going to start to be a quicker and quicker thing. Don't get me wrong, but usually if we're talking third density, things have a delay in manifestation. It's not like in supposedly once you get to the higher densities, manifestation is more quick, it's more instantaneous and things like that. So right now what we're seeing is, for all of us who have been here working over these past amount of time, now we're starting to see that energy flow cultivate here on the planet. We're starting to see it start to subtly manifest itself into the human collective through these very interesting and healthy ways. Like I said, I know so many people, they might be stone cold atheists right now still, but they're getting into meditation. They're like, okay, I need to start working on my mind and things like that. It's happening. And that's one of the biggest things too. We always, of course, we all have those days where, we want to get up and we're like, where's that fucking table? I want to flip it right now. I'm done. You know what I mean? I want to flip the table now. It needs to just change. But, and then that's even going back to, what I was saying, ascension symptoms be on Friday, don't change it at all. It's beautiful. That's kind of, it's Friday. So we're going to go with, don't change it at all. It's beautiful. And, it is ultimately, though, because the biggest thing, I tell people is, we could have two instances we could have more accelerations that occur, which I do think could potentially happen, and that's why, right now, the time for trying to wake people up is over. The events are going to do it for us. You know what I mean? There's going to be more events that come forward. And that's why I say, we're terraforming the frequencies of this planet to pave that foundation for more of these events to come forward, for more people to wake up. And what our main focus is to be these stewards to these individuals, is to work with the other awakened ones as a family, so we can keep catalyzing this further and accelerating this further. So now what we're seeing is the results of our efforts finally coming into being, and while yes, it's going to start small, everything does, everything starts off from a simple standpoint. Everything starts off with a pinprick of light, but then that light starts to attract more light. That energy starts to attract more energy. And then eventually what we have is a snowball that cannot be stopped at this point. That's something we should all be giving ourselves a pat on the back for right now, is the fact that we're starting to see all of this come to being. We're starting to see it come to fruition. The frequency of the planet's increased. We're in the courage frequency. We're no longer in this mucky, third density, negative polarity frequency that we were in. So that's something to relish in my opinion. It is. And and for the people who have been in for a long time too, we're especially happy because for a while it was very lonesome. We were all very spread out, and yes, the internet was around, but it wasn't what it is today. We didn't have the connections that we do with the individuals that we have today. So it's, if you ever think that, it's not happening fast enough, or you think that, is there anything even happening? Just take a look a little bit deeper. And I guarantee you're going to see there's actually a lot that is starting to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the same, even because obviously everybody knows by now, I used to be a nurse. I'm no longer a nurse because it's a crock of shit, but anyway, it's a different story. With the medical system now.
Exactly. That does need to get burnt down. If there's anything that needs to get burnt down, it's that. But go ahead, Sam.
I can tell you some fucking stories, but I won't. But anyway, yeah, it's a story for another day. I think when I did a placement in a mental health unit, and they did this publication. They're like, "Oh, do you want a copy of this mental health publication?" I was like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." And I looked through, and it was meditation practice. There was this big thing about how a Buddhist had gone on this island, and this boat was annoying him, and then he realized that it wasn't the boat, it was himself that was actually annoyed, and all these Zen practices. And this was a couple of years ago, and I was like, fucking A, man, this is great. It's literally, I went to a symposium on trauma and self-neglect, which was just it's a mainstream thing, lots of medical professionals went to it, and they were talking about how there's a link between trauma and people's lives basically escalating into madness, and how if you can go and find the root cause of these problems and give them a safe space to discuss it, or even just verbalize the initial trauma, it can have a profound effect, which we talk about spiritual practices and becoming more aligned with ourselves. It all ties hand in hand. So I was seeing it before I even left nursing, and this is the thing, you see, there was since the thing with the thing in your arm, there was a real split down the middle, and you could see the people that were asleep, or the people that were actually, I'm going to say, fucking evil, actually. And I'm not going to mince my words when I say that, because there is some really evil people in the medical industry. And then the people that are in it because they're genuine healers, there's a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors. I mean, the higher up you go, the more they're not as nice, to be honest. But your carers, your healthcare professionals, your nurses, they go into it because they've got this beautiful healing aura and they want to make a difference, but they become trapped by this system. And people are starting to see that now. And even when I left, I got to a point where I'd had enough. People are leaving en masse. The people that really want to make a difference and want to be healers, they're going now. And that for me was a massive sign that that things were shifting, that the tides were shifting. They were asking questions like, well, why are they giving people this medication? End of life care. I know you talked about that on your show the other day, didn't you? Giving these medications, we were talking about morphine and all this kind of stuff. It essentially stops people breathing. They're euthanizing people. you know. And I've worked in a couple of care homes. I'm not going to name it, but there was an instance with this old chap, and he'd not got antibiotics in time. And what actually happens is you end up with like delirium, you get really poorly, you don't eat, and you can, as an elderly frail person, you can go downhill really quickly. So what he really needed was some IV antibiotics, really, and being admitted. And because he was an elderly person, they all had a bit of a chat with the doctor, and they're like, yeah, we'll just put him on end of life. And I was like, are you joking me? He's got a UTI. He's not eating and drinking because it could be septic. Go give him some gentamicin or something, get him sorted out, get him in the hospital. Oh, no, he's really frail and old. We'll just, give him some Oromorph and and then he gets agitated. So they give him all this other stuff. And it was like, they essentially killed this man.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
All right. And that's well, in, to me, I'll even pull on the show, that I had last Wednesday, is the medical system, as unfortunate as it is it's a manifestation of the matrix system. It is a arm of the invisible college. And, I don't talk about the invisible college as much as I used to, because ultimately we're rising above that at this point in time. We've figured them out. We know what they're doing. So their power's gone. But what the invisible college is the collective of intelligence agencies and secret societies that manufacture, fabricate, and create the matrix reality and its narratives. So this is something there's definitely secret orders around. There is, they have secret orders that blend into society, that they often take very mundane and menial jobs when they blend into society. They're most of the time your package delivery drivers, your road workers, your all of these different people. And that basically this medical industrial complex, or this healthcare system, is an extension of this. And when we think things that are of the matrix reality, now I want to kind of differentiate this. The physical reality and the matrix reality are two separate things. Okay. And I'll even use to describe it in terms with the term Maya, right? So we know that Maya means illusion. Now we have the Maya of nature and the Maya of society. All right.
Okay.
So the Maya of nature, an absolutely real, beautiful, divine thing. The Maya of nature is very spiritually healing for us. It helps us get in touch with our divine nature. There's lots of lessons, lots of things to learn from the Maya of nature, and that is the actual physical realm. And then we have societal.
Just to stop you.
Yeah,
so is that like? I'm just trying to get my head around that. Is that
organic,
like an organic illusion, essentially? So we've come to this organic illusion because we've come to learn and experience it, but essentially it's been taken over by the inorganic overlay, or
the inorganic overlay.
College.
That's exactly it. And that's kind of gets into the Maya of society. Now, what the Maya of society is the societal illusion, the matrix system. Okay, and this one we can even see in Vedic tradition. It isn't the most beneficial for us to have extreme attachment to. We can learn from it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, the society of Maya is what led to the societal Maya is what led to our awakening, right? Like, we can definitely learn from it, but having the attachment and thinking that that's all there is the downfall and the detriment. But that would be the matrix system, would be the societal Maya. When we the healthcare being a manifestation of that, the societal Maya is devoid of spirit. It's devoid of that divine spark. Because of the if we go by the Vedic terms, it's because of the forgetting. But that definitely has something to do with it too. But there's other things at play, and we all know that. But that's why you see this coldness and this harshness, this negative egregore almost that has just permeated into the healthcare system. And it's also, for some reason too, we're going to get into the woo-woo territory a little bit. This healthcare system, for some reason, knows about people like us. I don't know how they do. But maybe Sam can give us some insight. I don't know if she knows, but they somehow know who we are, and that's why we always end up getting treated poorly or targeted when we end up going into the healthcare system. Now, how do they know who we are? I don't know. That's even going even down into a further thing that there's only one rabbit hole that I'm really putting some stock and faith into at this point in time. And it's the only reason why is, and I'm not frustrating myself with it. I'm allowing it to come to me as it's supposed to. And it has been starting to reveal itself to me in small pieces over time. But the best thing I can say is that, number one, the parasite class in these intelligence agencies, they know about star seeds and they know about angel seeds. They know about us.
They do. Absolutely, I believe that.
They have paperwork on us. They know we exist, and they know that we're here. Okay. They potentially have been monitoring us since we were young. There's that capability. We look at things like the GATE program and the gifted and talented education that's here in the United States. I don't know if you guys got something like that over in the UK, Sam, or something similar, but this is one way that they monitor us is through these programs. I also think has something to do with the blood as well, because one of the biggest things in my spiritual evolution that I've seen play out in all areas time and time again, and it's the most substantiated thing to me, is the as above, so below principle. I've seen it, experienced it on so many levels. I know it to be the case, at least in my journey. But so if we take as above, so below, if the parasite class is a bloodline amongst them, so below, we might have a bloodline amongst us. So there's an interest in the blood. There's some kind of interest with this blood. And then we get to the whole potential genetic engineering of a gene of ISIS. We talk about the orphan trains and the Cabbage Patch Kids that were born, these kids that seem this en masse of orphans that seemingly appeared out of nowhere. In the late 1800s to early 1900s, no origin point. The whole program was run by Freemasons, so we can guess there's maybe something going on there. But the one thing I'll say is my theory is this: the reason why they know about us is there's some kind of monitoring system for people like us that exists here. And potentially that's why when we look at the individuals who have connected with their divine spark, they always have these really negative experiences with, you guys know David. When he went to the hospital and he had his ordeal, don't you find it a little odd that the CEO of the hospital video called him to try and convince him to take the stab? What CEO of any hospital is going to take time out of their life to video call your average run-of-the-mill patient? This is what I mean. Like, you have to look at this stuff, excuse me, from that kind of perspective, because that's how they do it. They do it through plausible deniability, and they do it through being subtle.
Yeah.
So no CEO is going to take, you talk about a CEO, man, makes probably like 8 figures a year, probably off on vacation somewhere, with his family or whatever he's doing. And he's going to take the time out of his day to video call your average run-of-the-mill patient, your average Joe Schmo that comes into the hospital, and frickin' to tell him. So there's obviously some kind of targeting that's going on when it comes to spiritual people and this healthcare system. Because what I think it is you have those the dark energies and the egregores of the matrix system that can inhabit people there, take people over there, and this energy knows that who you are. So that's just my theory on it. It's of course, like I said, I don't dig into rabbit holes very much anymore, but this one, the only reason I've been putting energy into this one is, number one, is I'm not frustrating myself with it. I'm not digging consistently. I'm letting itself reveal itself to me as I grow in my perspective. And as I grow in my evolution, new pieces are starting to get revealed to me about it. So I'm kind of taking the slower road with it, which is, because of course, right now my priority is my evolution, my healing. This is kind of a side quest for me. Like it's a side quest. Go ahead, Sam. What you say?
Sorry, every time about it. Yeah. I was just I've got a few things I just want to ask you about that. So,
Yeah.
I just want to point out, yeah, you are on your spiritual evolution. You're in a position now as well where you can disseminate that information and you can actually do something about it, which is, I think, why it's coming to you, because it's part of your journey or your mission or whatever. It's a bit of a side quest, isn't it, really? And that's how, yeah, I think you're going to be doing more with that, basically, but we'll maybe talk about that later.
Definitely, thank you.
But yeah, going on to the healthcare system, I really want to come back to that point when you were like, people are taken over by this egregore. So just how that's kind of presenting itself to you. I've also been having these kind of knowings about the matrix control system and how it's got its own kind of intelligence and awareness. And we've actually got matrix plugs within us, and I found some before, and they're alarmed. They've actually got alarms. So when you try and remove them, I mean, that's how I perceive it in my consciousness, but it's almost an alarm. So you've got to get rid of the alarms and get rid of the technology, but it's physically put in your body. It's like a form of inorganic technology. And that is how they're monitoring us, for one. But also, because these systems, they're almost like in an astral, I'm trying to think how to put this. So they're astral, they're pulled down from the astral, and there's an energetic system with the egregore within the hospital system, which is basically feeding it and feeding off of patients, which is why they want to keep people poorly. It's like a loop, like an energy loop, almost like looshing. Yeah. And since the jabby in the arm business, when somebody does that and they give up their sovereignty, this is what I found, they essentially sever their connection to the divine. And this egregore that they're handing over their sovereignty, because basically what they're saying is, I don't think I can keep myself safe. I'm full of fear. I need somebody to give me this injection to keep me safe from dying or whatever. And that's how they get in. That's the back door. And then what they do is they essentially become empty vessels, or maybe not empty vessels, because there is still something there. But they've given themselves this portal, and I've actually had it happen to me before, where somebody has come through an energetic portal in a person and they've just changed. And they've then attacked me psychically, like they've shouted at me or whatever. But then I could physically, it was my dad actually that happened, because my dad's had the jabby and all that jazz. And he just something changed in him, and he was literally like shouting at me, and I could feel it. And it took me, like, I had to just say no. And in that moment, I had to really stand up to my dad, because obviously there's a lot of issues there, and say that this isn't going to happen. And in stepping in my power, it was like it smacked it in the face essentially, and he just went, because it couldn't, because I'd said no. And that's how we deal with this. It's standing in your sovereignty and saying, no, I'm not going to accept this, and they can't do anything about it.
Well, actually, too, you brought up a very good point. They cut off their aspect to their divine spark. It's giving away a piece of your humanity. You're giving away your humanity. Is ultimately what you're doing, and you see this in a lot of healthcare professionals, because and to me, what I think is there's a lot of symbolism behind the jam. Because when we talk about and you guys have heard me talk about this too a lot. Symbolism is the true nature of this reality, in my opinion. It's the true language of this reality. And if I were to say there's a main prime language, it would be symbolism, and spoken word would be secondary, because when symbolism traverses the dimensions, it traverses the awareness. The symbolism actually is it's picked up by all of our subconscious and unconscious mind, but very, very rarely is it picked up by the conscious mind. And we have to train ourselves to kind of pick up on it, And that's why I always say, like, you have to open yourself up to how the divine communicates with you. Because the divine, yes, it will communicate with you in the literal sense if it needs to, through a loved one or, a friend or something along those lines. Most of the time, the divine is communicating with you through the symbolism in your experience. And
Yeah.
you know, like through you know, the songs, the conversations you might hear people have. Case in point example, when I was walking down the street and I heard that conversation, the divines let me know, dude, Steve, it's coming, you're good, you hear that, it's coming. And like, yes, I hear that, you know, like, thank you for that, I'm grateful to hear that. But nonetheless, you look at the symbolism of receiving and accepting the staff. You know what I mean? And the symbolism behind it. I mean, look at the times and look at the energy of that time. It was the ripping away of our freedom. It was the ripping away of our sovereignty. It was the ripping away of our autonomy. And by you accept, which we all know are all very spiritual things, and by somebody accepting that thing, you know what I mean? And somebody accepting that jab, you basically forfeited your humanity, which is your sovereignty, your autonomy, your freedom, all of these things. These are very integral parts of humanity. And we know that symbolism carries a lot of energy. You know, like, why do you think that these rituals are done? Why do you think, like,
Yeah.
you know, all of this stuff is, the symbolism is very powerful. So that's why I think they've become these empty vessels. They've shed their shell. And you guys even know, and the split in the spiritual community that happened back then. Oh my goodness, I never expected that. Like, you know, like, and that's why that's how I knew it was a direct attack on us. Ultimately, we know, we look down, dude, it always filters down to a direct attack on the conscious collective. And
Yeah.
you look at the split that occurred back then, and you have people like us who know that freedom, sovereignty, autonomy are these very spiritual things, and we're not giving them up. And then you saw the other half of the community just placate to the narrative, like, you know, just fall into, like, we need to make people feel safe, and you know, we have to do this. And it's like, in some ways that was you know, you can look at it, a lot of people call about the separation of the wheat from the chaff, right? Like, you know, that's something that we'll see a lot of in these times, you know, is the separation of the wheat from the chaff. And that, in my eyes, just happened to be one of those, because as a spiritual person, one that is truly sovereign and connected to their divine spark, how could you be okay with giving something up like that? How could you find, what mental gymnastics did you do, like, within your mind, to think that it is an acceptable thing to give those things up? So, like, exactly, I'm with you. It was the reason why this happens. And even what you were saying with your dad, you know, and it's a Smith effect. It's like, it's almost as if, like, when you give up that piece of your humanity, the Smith effect becomes more prominent in an
Yeah.
individual. You can have that manifestation. You know, what is the Smith effect? I think it's a couple things. I don't think it's any really just one thing, but you know, a lot of people I know who are watching this, you've probably dealt with something like this. It's when you start to change yourself and go on your spiritual evolution, and everybody's mad at you for it, and they try to, you know, stifle you, try to turn you away from it any way they can. And, you know, it could be a couple of things. It could be the manifestation of the demiurge. You know, we look at the demiurge consciousness. It is a real thing. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Sam? I look like you were going to say something.
No, I was just faffing with the air. Go on.
No. You're okay. So, but you know, the demiurge consciousness could, you know, because you have to think, like, you know, it's very possible that that could be the case, or it also could be, you know, the fact that you're holding a mirror up to these people, and they see you achieving something that they don't think they're capable of achieving, but they most certainly are. They just have to realize that. It could be a couple things, but I've noticed that for those who have gotten the stab and who have gone along with that, it seems like the Smith thing just happens at such a higher rate.
Yeah.
With those individuals. So it's
does.
something we're gonna. Yeah, go. No, we're gonna say, Kirsten. Go ahead.
It does. I've seen it. And I wanted to say, too, I noticed back in whenever that was that they rolled that out, people's auras change when they get that. And they go kind of dark. And I actually had a friend of mine come to me and say, I want you to do some Reiki on me, because I only see black anymore. She used to see energy, and she said, I only see black. And she didn't know that that was what had caused it. And I didn't tell her, because I knew that she wouldn't accept that anyway. But I did clear it. And so I do want to say it does. it does take away that connection in some people. And some people I did not see. And I want to say that too, because I don't want people to be frightened or feel like, oh my gosh, I did this and it was, you know, you can detox from it, and you can also shift it energetically very easily. It just, you need to do it. I mean, because if you don't do it, it won't. Although I have known people that they went dark for a few weeks and then they came back. So
I think it depends on where they are, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. It depends where you are. And I just wanted to say that because I don't want people who have done that to go, oh my gosh, you know, I'll never be able to connection again. And that's not really true.
I mean,
but it
that
is
goes
true
into,
that it does,
oh, sorry, go on.
It is true that it does cut that connection, but you can get that connection back really easily.
Oh,
that's what I wanted to say.
I just wanted to say real quick. Go ahead. So if you don't mind me saying something. No, and of course, so like, and also too, there's also the intention. There are a lot of people who were illegally coerced into getting it. Yeah. There was a lot of people who were forced to get it, like almost against their will in a lot of ways. And, you know, the number one thing I'll say is this, like, and that's where I come from a different perspective on it than most, is like, I understand that if you do something that's highly selective and, you know, that is something that isn't done very frequently for work or something like that, and you didn't have a choice and you didn't have the ability to find a way to survive for you or your family, like at that point, like, no, I'm completely understanding of that. The ones that I'm not understanding of were the ones where like, give it to me, like, you know what I mean? Those are the ones where I'm like,
okay, I've got my jab. I'm like, you fucking idiot. Sorry.
No, exactly. But there's people out there, and I know quite a few, who they absolutely had no choice. Finding another job at the drop of the hat. They had kids, they had a family, okay, all that kind of stuff. Finding another job at the drop of the hat was not feasible. Okay.
They made it difficult on purpose. That's what they did. I mean, coming from the nursing thing, they threatened to fire us. They said they wouldn't give us any employment benefits if we got sacked because we didn't have it. They actually sacked carers. They didn't do it with nursing staff. They made it so they were literally going to starve you to death if you didn't take the jab. Absolutely. I mean, I didn't take it, and you know what I mean. But I was in a position where if I lost my job, it wasn't the end of the world. But a lot of people weren't in that position.
100%. And that's where I come from, an understanding point on that too. And exactly, they did. And that's why I said they impeded upon free will big time with this. They did. And that's why I think the floodgates opened a little bit further, you know, for people like us, as far as the help that we're receiving on a spiritual level and all of that, was because that whole incident was such an impedance on free will. You know, and ripping away. I mean, you know how the divine feels about sovereignty and autonomy. You know how it feels about that. And if, you know, through the separation of ego, that somebody decides they want to rip away the sovereignty and the autonomy of another living focal point, another living human being, the divine doesn't jive with that. That's impeding on free will. And we know that here you cannot, yes, you can use karmic retribution or revelation of the method, because ultimately that's what ends up getting us to use our free will to make something happen. But as far as the complete and total impedance of free will that happened in that incident, no, that's a big cosmic fuck no for the divine. It wants nothing. Mm-hmm. That's why when I joke with you guys, like, I want to egg them on. I want to be like, oh, I wish you would do something else. I really wish you would, because that's all we're going to need to get to where we need to the next place. And it's going to be your undoing if you try to. So, yes.
I'll be honest. So I just want to go into the different. So there's coercion in there, which is what was going on. And then because even if you're coerced, you could still say no, even though it's really difficult. So there's a bit of a differentiation there. However, that ain't even a real word, you know what I mean? There were people that were forcibly vaccinated, like they were poorly, they were taken to surgery and given a vaccination when they were asleep. That is against somebody's free will.
Oh, 100%.
That is literally, yeah. I just want to circle back quickly. We were talking about the matrix control system. what I think actually happens is, because I was sitting chewing on this, when you go into hospital, if you've got these etheric implants in you, just going back to David's story, and there's these open vessels, we'll call them. I think the matrix or the demiurge, or whatever you're going to call it, comes in and then utilizes it because it knows, because it's got these base, you know, when you're about the tabs, I think it's through this etheric technology, essentially. And that's how they know.
I think so too. So I do think there is some kind of they do have some kind of technology, and they to do things like that. And one of the biggest things, I had an experience, actually that was my first like really like big batch of hyperdimensional contact back in 2022, where I had an experience was that where this was shown to me, that the intelligence agencies have access to outside of the matrix reality. They have access to the other densities, and how they ended up getting it, from what was shown to me at that point in time, there were negative polarity interdimensional entities that are working with them that gave them access to it. So I 100% agree with you on what you said, Sam. There is a type of etheric technology that I think is being used in this case. And especially based on the experience I have when I was shown, like I remember I'm walking through like what you would call hyperspace or something like that, and I'm seeing these like CIA agents walking through fucking hyperspace, and I'm like, what the hell, what are you guys doing here? And I don't think like they noticed me, or they could have seen me or anything along those lines. But I remember seeing them there, so that lends credence to what you're saying. I think they have of course, either some kind of technology or some kind of method that allows them to do that, for sure.
Sorry, my dog's being a bit naughty.
It's okay, don't worry about it. Yeah, no worries.
She's like, give me some attention. Yeah, I think you're right. I just, that's really interesting. So were you on, did you take any kind of like antigens or anything to get, what do you, how do you pronounce it?
Entheogens. So yes, that was a DMT experience. It was. Although I've had it now, I don't need any psychedelics to have the contact now. That was kind of what first broke it open for me. And you know, it's interesting because ever since I was a child, I always wanted to meet another entity or another being from another place. It was like it was something I always wanted. Like my mom will even tell stories today. Like you always used to watch shows about UFOs and the paranormal and all that, especially when I was a child. And and entities and things like that really didn't start to showcase themselves to me until I hit my 30s. Like, you know, until I hit my 30s. And I think they were waiting till I got to a certain point to where I was open enough to receive what they were. And they are what you think they are and not what you think they are. And that's kind of like the best thing I could describe with that, because a lot of these entities are interdimensional from what I've come to find. Like, yes, they can be physical if they choose to, but for them, it's like it's the equivalent of change of trading in your Shelby Cobra Mustang for a beat up 1986 Honda Accord. Like, you know, like, so that's kind of like being physical for them. They're trading away their Mustang for a beat up hatchback Honda Accord, you know. So but in this experience, so I know how to make the spirit molecule, and I had just happened to make a fresh batch of it. And in my mind and in my heart, it was a good day for it. So I decided to, yes, I'm going to embark upon it. And I remember as I was inhaling and taking the hit, and I'm holding it in, I'm like, something's different this time. Like, this is going to be different than any other time I've experienced with this before. And as I exhaled, I saw reality begin to decompartmentalize itself around me completely. The physical realm, that the experience that you're looking at right now, was no more. And surrounding me were these 7 seraphim looking beings. and they looked human, like they had human faces and they had a human look to them, but they had wings and they had these serpentine bands of energy coming off of them. And I remember I'm sitting there in this whole experience and I'm like, holy shit, I've actually died this time. And like that was like my first thought. And I remember like I'm sitting in this basement right here, right? And there's no plumbing running through the ceiling or anything. And I feel this water dropping on me. And I'm like, and I think to myself, like, where's this water coming from? What am I feeling? And then I hear, now the best way I can describe this, it was emotional telepathy. Like I heard what they spoke to me in my chest, and I felt the emotion that was conveyed with what they were saying to me in my chest at the same time. And I remember they said to me, Stephen, the water is the medium between the densities. This is how we could come to you and we could communicate with you. And I remember I was like sitting there at that point in time, and I'm looking at front of me, like the thing that I wanted the most since I was a child is now finally happening. I've got to pull myself together, and I'm like, okay. I was like, what do you want to tell me? And they're like, we want you to come with us. We want to show you something. And so the first part of the experience, they took me to what they called the true Garden of Eden. And it actually bears a lot of resemblance to the Gnostic version of the Garden of Eden, because in the Gnostic version, the true Garden of Eden was in a heavenly realm. It was not here on earth. Okay. And so I remember they took me and I was in this realm, and I kid you not, Sam, you could feel the love of the divine permeating this realm. And it was, I didn't want to leave. I was like, I could stay here for good. You can just leave me here. And like, I'm like laying, dude, I didn't want to leave. It was so fantastic. I just felt the love of the all just permeating my entire being. And there was this crystalline city. And this crystalline city was in the middle of this flowing green pasture. Like the grass was the greenest grass I'd ever seen in my life. And it was flowing like consistently in the wind. And I remember I'm looking into the city and I see humans, right? And I see all of these humans just walking around the city. And I'm like looking and I'm just like, man, I was like, this is so profound. Like, this is so amazing. And then all 7 of them turned and looked at me and go, Stephen, don't you remember? And I was like, remember what? They said, you don't remember. And I was like, no, I don't. They said, you're from here. You are one of us. And we sent you back with many others, to assist and help with what's going on the planet right now. And they said, we don't want you to worry, though, because when you're done there, you're coming back here. And I remember as soon as they said that to me, I call it the lightning bolt of God, like struck into my being. And I was flooded with all of these memories of this place. And I was like flooded, and I knew like I was from there. That's the best way to describe it. That was my home world, my place of origin, and I remember like sitting there and I looked at them and I said, thank you for this, because now it all makes sense. And they go, before you go, we need to show you something else. And I was like, okay. And so then they took me, and this is where I ended up seeing the CIA agents and the higher densities and all of that. They took me and they showed me how fabricated and manipulated the Matrix reality truly is. And this was one where I had to go back to the spiritual drawing board when I got back, because I always believed it and I always knew it, don't get me wrong, but to see the extent, I think that was what was big for me, and that was really paradigm shattering for me, was the extent that it's fabricated and altered and manipulated. And I remember looking at it and I like put my etheric hands on my face. I was like, oh my God, it's like that. Like that was exactly the expression that like left my mouth. And what's even great about this experience, of course, is it showed me truly that my consciousness creates reality too. Because when I was coming back from the experience and reality started to recompartmentalize itself, it put itself back together wrong. And I remember I was looking at it and I was like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. And as soon as I made like the acknowledgement that reality had put itself back together wrong, went bloop and just flipped back to the way that it should have been. And that was for me I was like, oh my goodness, dude, my consciousness really does freaking create reality.
That was like
Like
a cosmic joke, wasn't it? It was like a bit of a joke to get you to, yeah.
It was, and I'd always believed my consciousness, and I have had experiences otherwise that have shown me that my consciousness creates reality. But that was like the icing on the sundae at that point. Watching that happen, reality put itself back together wrong. Then me acknowledging it was put back together wrong, and it puts itself back together right. Like, yeah, no, that was the icing on the sundae.
That is so awesome, Stephen. What an
amazing story.
It was
so interesting about this Garden of Eden, though. I mean, they never let me remember my stuff really. So I've obviously never taken any mushrooms or anything, but I've been taken out of my body, and essentially what they do is they just put me to sleep, and I fall where I lay basically, and then I wake up like 12 hours later, and I'm like, oh shit, it's happened again. But I come in with these. It's like a kind of half knowing, and it's like it was like I had this experience. I mean, I'd not been really awake that long, but I'd been doing a lot of meditation and intense work, and
Sam,
it's like my higher self.
Good. You're at such a great place.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying my best, but yeah. So my higher self had kind of come in, and it was like it was talking through me. That's the only way I can describe it. Like we'd become one. We'd made a bit of a pact somewhere that it was all right for it to do it. And I said, right, it's all right. I accept. And I don't even know where it come from. I was like, right, okay, I accept my mission. Let's do it. I'll stop fighting it. Come on, let's do it. And I fell asleep. I was just out cold. And I woke up 12 hours later, and I got this memory that I'd been somewhere. Absolutely. And it's like my body had been that like my soul had been that expanded. It had to be compressed back into my body. And I was like trying to acclimate as I'd woken up, and I put my feet on the floor, and I could feel all the fibers in the carpet, and I was like, this is really weird. I know all the fibers are here, and I put my hands under the tap and stuff, and it was like I could feel the water molecules. I mean, it didn't last for very long, and I was in this absolutely bizarre bliss state, and I knew I'd been somewhere, and it felt like I'd been home. So it really resonated when you said that.
It's I'm telling you, I think, like I said, we're definitely working with the same energy, all of us. And, we've talked about that. You guys, I think, get like the feminine aspect of it, which is great. And I get the masculine, because they're tough love with me, man. Like you said, but that's why I trust them. That's why I do, because it's like I show up there, they'll all get up and be like, listen, man, we saw that the other day. What the was that? And it's like, and I'm like sitting there like looking at them, and I'm like, I know. And they'll lean into me first. But after they're done leaning into me and like telling me what I need to work on, then they are like, okay, like, you're doing real good, man. You are like, we want to impart this on you, all of that. And that was like the first, and that's what, led me to know that I was an angel seed, was that. And because that was a concept that I, as we talked about earlier in the show, like, I kind of fought with it a little bit, for some time. I always knew it to be true, but I was like, okay, but even if that's the case, I'm Stephen now. And what it was is like, I had to shift my perspective on it. Like I talked about earlier in the show, it's like, well, yes, this isn't a part of me. This is what I am. I'm here as Stephen now, and I need to take that knowledge and that remembrance, and I need to make Stephen channel that into this reality. And when I couldn't ignore it anymore, I kid you not, a year to the day, almost, of this last experience, a year to the day. It's a Friday. I come home, I had some mushrooms in the fridge, and I was like, okay, let's do like a smaller dose. Let's do like 1.5 grams, and like, let's do some meditation, like nothing really to go too far out, but just go in and, do like some work. And for those of you who have taken mushrooms before, the experience normally at a dose like that only lasts 3 to 4 hours. But the strange part about that whole day is at the 3-hour mark, it started getting more intense, and it started getting DMT intense. And I'm like sitting at my kitchen table, like, what in the hell? Like, oh my God, like I need to go lay down on the couch. I'm like, what is happening right now? And like, so like I fumble my way over to the couch, and I lay on my couch, and that's when it came out of the wall. And now the best thing I could say is it put like a temporal pause on reality. And what I mean by temporal pause was it paused the flow of time, or my perspective of time, around me, but time continued to move in its own perspective outside of, and this being of light just came out of my wall, and it's sitting there talking to me, and like, I kid you not, talking to this thing. It was the same kind of communication as the first experience. It was like staring into the sun, not from the earth, but being right up on the sun. That was communicating with this thing. And it was telling me, Stephen, you have to remember. You have to remember. And I'm talking back to it, and I'm like, I have to remember what? And he goes, don't you remember the last time? You are an Elohim. You were sent here with many other Elohim to help elevate the frequency and terraform the frequencies of this planet. And I'm like sitting there, because at this point, like, this is the second time it's happened, a year to the day. I could shelf the first experience and be like, okay, cool. Like, that was an awesome experience. We're going to put it on the shelf and we'll visit it later. I can't shelf this one because now the same thing is happening a year to the day. And the message is more clear and more prominent than it was the time before. And then it starts giving me a breakdown on why my life was the way it was and why all of these things happened to me, because it was leading up to this exact moment. They say, it was like, I know you've had a rough card in life, Stephen, but the one thing I want to tell you is because you're this is what you are. Your frequency is higher than other human beings. And when a human being who's not ready for your frequency encounters it at the soul level, it's jarring to them, and it manifests on the surface level as a dislike towards you. And it started like giving me like this like school and like rundown on like why your life the way it was, you know, and this and this. And I'm like sitting there looking at it, and I thanked it. And then at that point in time, I realized this was my higher self. And when I thanked it, and it looked at me and it got emotional after I said that, and it said, I also want you to know that don't you ever worry. If you ever need us, we're right around the corner. And then that's when it went back into the wall. And at that point in time, like I said, I could have shelved the first experience. You know what I mean? Like the first time, yeah, could have been a one-off. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that this happened again, almost a year to the day after the first experience, and the message was so prominent, I was like, I can't ignore it anymore. I can't ignore it. Like there's something to this, and I have to explore it. Now, like I said in the beginning of the show, what it's done is you don't see me plastering it on my profile. You know, you don't see me being an angel seed influencer, you know, wearing a low cut cleavage top while I do tarot readings and shit like that. All right. And I'm not using it as an ego template or an ego plaque. All it shows me is that I have this piece of me, this otherworldly piece of me that is capable of this great thing and this great power. And I have to find a way to channel that into who I am now. And
but that's great. You've done the right thing. That's the thing. And that's why you had to wait, you know? And I think just a few points. The fact that you'd only done 1.25 grams of mushrooms and it had expedited the thing. I think you actually slipped into a different dimension, but that's just a theory I've got.
I think so too. I think there was some kind of crossover because, like I said, it was like a temporal pause. And in that experience too, they showed me the memories of them interacting with me ever since I was a child. And one of the last times was, and I remember so when I was 14, this was the last time they came to me, and they told me, because you were starting to, because of the conditioning of the reality, you were starting to lose your openness at that time to us and who we were. And what they do is that's the best thing I can describe. It's like a temporal pause. It pauses the flow, your perspective of time around you. Time flows in its own perspective on the outside of you, but it's like crossing through a dimension. And the last time they came to speak to me before I recultivated my, I was 14. I was in my godmother's basement. I used to sleep down there because my dad was in jail at the time, and I was staying with my godmother, waiting for him to get out of jail. And there was a bookcase down there, and they came out from behind the bookcase. And it's weird how they appear. They always come through walls. They always come through these areas where freaking, like you don't think anything can come through there. You know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing that can squeeze through there, but they somehow managed to do it. And they came to me then, and they talked to me then. And I remember the conversation we had then. So like in some ways it was refreshing to know that, I had some guides, some watchers that have had my back, like the entire time I've been here, and they did it in like their plausible deniability way. They would do those temporal pauses and remove the memories of it happening after it happened, and all of that. But like now, like all of the memories have come back to me, and I said after that experience, I don't need the psychedelics to communicate with them anymore. They have they have a very unique way of doing it. They do it through symbolism. They do it through emotion. They do it through feeling. That's how they communicate with me. They also, when I do take a psychedelic, they will show up, and which was interesting because last time they showed up, there was no leaning into. They were actually very proud of me. They were actually like, we don't have anything to yell at you about this time. You've been doing pretty good. And I was like, coming from you, that means the world. Thanks for that. And that's when I did that channeling, when they started, pouring the hyperfractal geometry liquid, whatever it was. That's the best way I can describe it, into my crown chakra.
Oh my God. Yeah, that channel. I was reading it, and there was like, I was vibrating. I was like, fucking hell, the energy. Yeah, I could feel it. It was absolutely mental.
They're strong. They're strong, man. They're like I used to have, the idea. I was like, yeah, I don't know, but at the same time, it's like they are us. That's the best way to describe it. Like we are them, they are us, and that's why after those experiences, I have a very famous saying that the human is the ET angel and the ET angel is the human. If you want to come down here and participate directly, whether you are what you would call a typical human soul or a being from a higher density or somewhere else, you have to hop in a human suit. If you want to come down here and directly participate, if you're okay with participating from the sidelines, you don't have to do that. And it's not like in the days of antiquity, in the days of Atlantis, where anything could come and go as it pleased. It's not like that anymore here because the frequency layers fell after that happened. So yeah, no, it's still to this day, next to my wedding, one of those two instances next to my wedding are some of the most important things that have ever happened to me.
And that's really, I think, a good place to leave it. But yeah. Wow, what a story. That's amazing.
Dude, you guys are amazing. This was awesome. Yeah.
You're going to have to come back again, Stephen, and talk to us some more about this stuff. It has been an awesome conversation. My internet is getting really wonky because there's a thunderstorm. So
I'm with you. No problem. Yeah, but other than that, like, I'm very proud of you too. Like, I just want to say that, like, I just, and Sam, it doesn't matter, how long or anything. The only reason I even bring that up is to show people that you don't have it all figured out. That's the only reason I bring that up. It doesn't matter. Sam, you have made, and I say this to Diana too, you two channel the divine in a way that is something to be impressed by. And that is just what I'll say about that. So it doesn't matter, there's people who once they wake up, it's 0 to 120, and you're one of those people, Sam. And and I'm proud of you two, because like I've seen you guys talk about this for a while, and and there was a lot of guesswork and stuff in the making of this, but here you two are. Here you two are doing this, and that's something to fucking celebrate, man. It truly is. Like, the metaphysical fat has been manifested. So like exactly. So, and I look forward to seeing where it brings you guys. And like I said, man, after you guys get some shows under your belt, I'm gonna send your channel over to Chris at my network, and I want to get you on the network too, guys. And that's one of the biggest things that I have done with my podcasting is, like, if I ever got somewhere with it, I always told myself I would help anybody I could who had their head, heart, and hands in it to get where they want to get with it too. So like, and I just want to say you two are some of the most amazing humans I've ever had the pleasure of getting to know here in this freaking crazy, dangerous, irresistible pastime called the human life. So I want to thank you guys
Likewise.
and I'm grateful for you guys for sure.
Likewise.
Well,
and we're
thank you.
grateful for you. And, Stephen did design our logo. So
he did. So if anybody wants any work doing, Stephen is the man.
Bradley brought it to life, though. He did, or what was it? Gary brought it to life. Gary and Casper brought it to life. Yeah. So freaking but and no, I'm grateful. I wanted to help you guys, man. And like, that's just, that's the ultimate thing. The one thing I could leave everybody with before we sign off is we are a family here, guys. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we have a soul bond. All right. And even if I don't know you personally, if you have awakened and you are on your spiritual evolution, we have a soul bond. That's what bonds us here, because we are all sharing this experience, this remembering, this awakening. We're all undergoing this. And that's what makes this conscious collective a family, and that's why we have to conduct ourselves with each other like this too, guys, because every time we fight amongst ourselves, guess who wins? The parasite class. Every time we spin our wheels, with pointless endeavors, and the letting our disagreements take precedence over our commonalities, the parasite class wins. And that's the biggest thing. If we want to shift this instantly, if you want to accelerate the shift in the best way that you can, take that mentality, take that mindset with your community. And I guarantee you, the more of us that begin to take that mindset that we are a family here undergoing this experience together, we will be casting mountains into the sea. And I'm not lying to you about that. That's not an exaggeration. We will probably do it. So think about that, guys.
We will.
Perfectly put. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Stephen, and you have illuminated us all with your very fascinating story of how you awakened and your opinions. So yeah, we'd love to have you back on, you and the lovely Diana, because we didn't even touch on your newest venture, which I really think that we need to kind of discuss in more detail, because I'm excited for you. I really am excited for this. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Anyway, Kirsten, any last words before we sign off?
No, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for you. And we are a family. And thank you so much for coming on, Stephen. It's such a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And
absolutely, guys.
Wonderful insights.
Thank you. Well,
all
guys,
right.
if you want to find me, I'll send Kirsten a link, and she'll post it at the bottom of this video.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Anything else you need to share before you go? Where else to find you? You're on Rumble, aren't you? And you too.
Yeah. So one thing I want everybody to do, if you like me and you like what I have to say, definitely go check out the Forbidden Knowledge Network too. I know some of you guys might know Forbidden Knowledge News. You might know Chris Matthew. You might know Ryder Lee. You might know a couple of those guys. But go to www.forbiddenknowledge.news. You can find me there with everybody on my network. Diana just got on the network too, so she'll be a part. You guys are going to be next, so that's really cool. And you guys can find me on Rumble and YouTube under BGCast, and you can find me on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Rockfin, Spreaker, Apple under BGCast, and you can find me on all social media under BGCast. I am most active on Facebook and X. I am in a permanent shadow ban vault on Instagram. Don't ask me why. For those of you who know me, I post nothing but positive and uplifting content, but it's empowering content. Remember, we can't have any empowerment going on around here. So that's the mentality, I guess. But yeah, and come check me out if you want to be a guest on the show or you want me to be a guest on your show. Feel free to just drop me a line.
Awesome.
All right.
I don't know if you wanted to stay on at the end because we need to grill you about that pyramid.
Yes. No, I can hang out for a couple minutes. Yeah, if you guys want to chat, for sure.
Okay, cool. Right.
Okay,
Thank you for tuning in. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you to Stephen, and thank you for watching, everyone.
Hi, guys.
And have a beautiful day. Yay. Here we
Have a good
go.
one, guys.
See y'all soon.
See you soon.